gonna make you a podcast you can't refuse. Thank you for joining us tonight on Thursdays with Moire, not Tuesdays with Moire anymore, for the Godfather Trilogy special and 65th episode. Welcome, I'm your host, Ian Taylor. Joining me tonight is my wonderful co host, Devin Kane, and we have not one, but two guests with us tonight. I'd like to start with a brand new guest joining us. Julia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello and good evening. Buonasera. My name is Julia. Um, I was kindly invited to this podcast, and totally not racially profiled by my friend Devin.
Way to call
And
me out.
no, it's okay. It's all love.
Ah,
No, I
got you.
am a huge fan of these movies. More specifically, the Godfather trilogy. Um, they actually were eye-opening to a lot of what goes on in I know it's mostly fictional, but it was eye-opening for a lot of mafioso history. So yeah, they're enjoyable. The music, the the acting is just chef kiss.
Second
And I'm
level.
glad to be here.
Awesome. We're happy
Glad
to
to
have
have
you,
you.
Julia.
It's so hard to it's hard to overestimate just how huge and influential these films are, and this really is like a tentpole for people's understanding of Italian culture. So I hope that we can expose some truths, but also maybe dissuade some falsehoods that in your experiences. So I'm
Yeah, absolutely.
really excited for tonight.
And we have
Anyway,
a third guest with us tonight. Matt, welcome back. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My friends, I wish to
God
thank
damn
you
it.
for joining me or allowing me to join you this evening again. It has been some time since I've been away. If you'll have to excuse me, I've been away on business. But now I'm glad that we can all sit down and enjoy a beautiful movie, a meal together, and we can finally enjoy ourselves. Buongiorno, everybody. Matthew Portelli has rejoined the podcast.
beautiful.
Bravo.
Well
Bravo.
done.
Sorry.
Bravo.
Bravosta.
Yeah,
You'll have
Barossa.
to,
That's not a word.
you'll have to forgive my hamness of this. I love these movies. I have a very interesting history with this franchise. But the long and short of it, I was asked to be a Godfather. I had never watched the movie before, so the first time I watched the movie was a big, important point in my life. So
Yeah, I want
Wow.
to kind of start off the podcast with asking you guys what was your first introduction into The Godfather? Because I have a pretty interesting story about that too, but love to hear you guys go first.
do you want me to elaborate on what I was just talking about?
Please.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay, in that case, my aunt's, oh, geez, sorry,
Rizia.
my mother's sister, who's my aunt, was had recently gotten married and was having a firstborn son. And I was the only one in the family who thought at the time that it was going to be a boy. Everyone else was saying, no, it's going to be a girl, it's going to be a girl, girl, go, girl. I was the only one in the family who thought it was going to be a boy. Lo and behold, little Trent Walker Seath was born on January 27th to our surprise. So at that time, I think it was like just after Christmas, and my aunt asked me, would you want to be the godfather? And one, I never knew what that was. Two, I had never seen the movie before, but I've heard like the reference of the Godfather and seen it like in popular media. So after that, I accepted, of course, and I watched the movie for the first time. And ever since then, I was going around saying, "Oh, I'm gonna make them an offer they can't refuse. Oh, look how they massacred my boy." I would just go around, start quoting the movie because I
Take the cannoli.
absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. Marlon Brando, Al
Mm.
Pacino. It's an amazing movie. But to this day, I'd never seen the second nor the third part. So
Really?
it's finally good to finish rounding out the trilogy, seeing where a lot of parts from like pop culture are seeing from this thing. And yeah, it was a fun and interesting experience. So
Yeah, nice. Julia?
All right. Well, to be quite honest, my introduction to the movies, like to actually sit down and watch the movies, it only really happened over the summer, when I saw that the movies were on Netflix. However, with that being said, my dad is a huge fan of the original novel by Mario Puzo. Um, and he had a poster in the basement that was always like there. And when I was little, um, I would always see the novel and I would see like the poster, and The Godfather was always something that was looming there. That I would see, but I was always told like, "Oh no, you're too young to watch this. You know, a lot of violence." Yep.
Mm.
But and of course, yeah, like that's how it goes for when you have young kids. Um, but when I saw that the movies were on Netflix, I was like, "Oh, okay. Let me dip into this." And I immediately fell in love with the first movie, especially the second one. I was a little hesitant with the third one because I have heard uh, a mixed bag of opinions. Um, but I'll say I was pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
And yeah, it's all really thanks to my dad that I'm into these movies, because as soon as I watched them, I was texting him. I was like, "Oh my god, I watched The Godfather. What have I been missing my whole life?" And he's like, "Oh, we gotta discuss this now, because you're in your late 20s and you are allowed to watch these movies now."
Welcome to the family. Yeah.
Welcome to the family.
The
Yeah.
proper initiation.
That's
And
it. That's a good one.
I borrowed the novel from him,
Oh,
and
really?
I am reading it. I am
See, I still
not.
need to read the novel, so.
Yeah, so
too.
it's there's definitely a lot of, I'm not trying to go on a tangent, I apologize, but
No, please do.
there's definitely a
ahead.
lot of stuff that was taken out of the movie, but so far, even though I'm only a little ways into it, um they've done a great job at adapting a movie out of it, and I'm pleased.
Hmm
100%.
Yeah,
Molto bene.
for sure.
I think
Yeah.
that's the same with all like
Pretty
book
much,
to
yeah.
movie adaptations. There's so much you have to fit into it. So
Well, it also helps that it's the same writer. Like Mario Puzo had a writing
yes,
credit on all three films. I don't know how much of an influence he had on the sequels in particular, but for the first film, like he was basically intertwined with Francis Ford Coppola to adapt it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, he had a big handle on it.
oh yeah.
There was so much working against them too, and I feel like that
Mhm.
adversity almost helped kind of with the quality of it because they didn't want Marlon Brando. They were very the studio was not happy with a lot of the casting choices and some of the decisions that Coppola was making at the time, and he was kind of a young director trying to prove himself. And I think it's because of the adversity that they had almost with the studio and the fact that Mario Puzo was involved that it kind of became the classic that it is. And like the book wasn't even that huge apparently by the time they made it, but it became such a cultural phenomenon after that time.
Yeah, I'd imagine people just
100%.
wanted more of the world after that happened. How'd you first watch The Godfather, Devin?
Um, it was only like a few years ago, I think, that I had finally seen it. I remember I had an interest in seeing it when I was really young, and it was one of those things where my dad was saying that it'd be like parts of it are too slow and then it's too violent and it wouldn't be the kind of thing that interests me. I always like a challenge, but I didn't end up seeing it at that age when I was younger, just because it seemed like it'd be like too complex a film for me to appreciate. But I remember seeing Rugrats 2 parody it in the beginning, and
Yeah,
that kind of sparked.
that was my first introduction to it.
yeah,
I
remember
I
seeing
don't know.
that too.
I don't know if anyone else saw that, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But that kind of sparked my interest again, and I eventually came across them, and yeah, I was blown away by just everything about these films. It's very fascinating. This whole, family loyalty, and you understand the motivations for all they're doing, but also there's a certain line of do you go along with what's happening, and
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
fascinating to kind of explore. And I imagine that there was these bloodlines and histories of bloodshed, and they kind of mention in the film that this is like a feud that's been going on for like 2,000 years, and when does it end? And
Mhm.
I imagine it's hard to get off that train once you're on it.
That's something part two in particular, I think, addresses
Yeah.
just that theme of history repeating itself and the inescapable nature of living that life of crime. For me, I admit I'm the same. I've always watched parts of it. It's been a big part of my household. My mother and father loved the first one to death. My mother hates the second one, but my father loves it. And yeah, it was always yep. Part two is a little bit polarizing, but we'll get to that. But ever since I went
It's
to
one of those.
college,
Yeah.
this was one of those films we had to watch in college. I can't remember which class it was. I think it was like Hollywood cinema or no genre films, and this was the film we had for the monster category because of course it's here. That's what Goodfellas for every film school and
Maybe Untouchables, I'd say.
oh Untouchables, yeah, that's potential as well.
Everyone glosses over Untouchables as one of my
And
personal favorites.
Yeah, that one's kind of underrated.
it's also hard to avoid Goodfellas. That's
Yes,
another like.
True.
very
That's a big
influential.
initiation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
It's-
definitely.
Although
to be fair, it's like the quote unquote big air quotes here gangster movie.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
and here's the thing: we probably wouldn't have Goodfellas without Godfather, because Godfather
No.
basically proved that movies like this can be successful. People can watch movies about criminals and genuinely like them and be fascinated by their personal lives and their family lives. A genre which was kind of falling out at the time because in the '60s, like the noir genre was dying out, the crime genre was dying out. Nobody was really interested in these crime stories anymore, and I'd
Mhm.
argue this, along with Chinatown, kind of reignited the love that people have for this genre. So
Yeah,
without
because
this,
like
probably wouldn't have
it
movies
was
like
like before
Goodfellas.
this, you had like the original Scarface. I don't know if anyone saw the original Scarface,
Oh
but
yeah.
it was a very one-dimensional kind of perspective on these gangsters. Like they were just seen as
Mhm.
bad guys with no redeeming qualities or any understanding of why they do what they do. And that's kind of, I think, what motivated Brian De Palma to remake that film later in the 80s to try to add more dimension to that character. Um, and yeah, like those crime films were big in like the 1930s and the film noir days, but they were also quite heavily censored by the Hays Code,
Oh yeah.
which was like the classic censorship um, rules that were put in place for these violent kind of films. Scarface was one of the early ones pre-Hays Code, before any of that was implemented. But yeah, before this, gangsters were seen as like one-dimensional and violence because I imagine it was pretty raw at the time. Like they were active in the 30s and the 40s, but
Yeah.
and it would have taken some time later in the 70s where they actually reflect and look at these people as real people and they did things for reasons beyond being bad as fun. That's that's not the reason. There's lots of reasons. In this case, they want to persevere family image and their legacy, and there's all these complex reasons behind motivating their actions.
For sure.
Yeah.
But only time will tell. Like how cinema gets influenced by, you know, nobody knows what films are going to be like in 30 years from now. So it's always interesting to see like how these movies break new ground and change the genre. Films that we kind of take for granted and make fun of in pop culture, but you know, like ignoring their important effect, they are genuinely the first two movies are genuinely great movies, and the third one is a movie. We'll get to that shortly. But Julia, I have a question. Would
Yeah.
you like to introduce the first Godfather movie? Tell the audience a little bit about what it's about.
So the first Godfather movie, it's about a old crime family that has a lot of hold over, what was it, New York?
Yes.
Forgive me if I make some mishaps. It's been a little while since I last saw the first movie, but we're introduced to Vito Corleone. He is the big cheese, the big guy, the big boss. The Don Corleone. Don is how you refer to a mafia boss.
Mhm.
And where am I going with this? Okay, so yeah, so we're introduced to Vito Corleone. It's his daughter's wedding. There's a big family gathering, and we are almost immediately introduced to how he basically runs his daily life. He has people asking him for favors, so it's about the how do I say this? Like the
Downfall.
almost like the yeah, not I wouldn't say downfall. Kind of like the dirty deeds that people will ask him. Like people who have a
Yeah.
lot of respect for him, they'll ask him to like carry out things. Like for example, that father who came talking to him about his telling him about how his daughter was attacked by those guys
Mhm.
and was like, "Oh yeah, the police are they're not doing anything. But yeah, we're immediately introduced to Vito and his lifestyle, which carries on a lot through the movie. And then we're also introduced to Michael, who is Michael Corleone. Sorry, he is a sweet little college boy. He doesn't want anything to do with his family business, you know, and the yeah. So the movie basically is about how Michael kind of begins to evolve into this raging, cold-blooded mafia lord. Um, and we see his evolution from, like what I said, like sweet college kid to mafia lord, the downfall of his father, and all the little side streets that he experiences along the way, and how
And
jaded he becomes.
Yes,
Yep.
that's a big
Yeah.
important part of it. And what's
very
interesting,
well said.
yeah, thank you. What's interesting, I wanted to bring this up, is Al Pacino was very quiet and subtle in this movie
Yes.
compared to what he's like
Very.
now, and compared to what he's like in Part 3 especially. Like, there's one scene where he snaps and loses his shit, and because it's the only time it happens, it's so intimidating, where he's like, don't ask me about my business, Kate. Enough! And he just slaps the table. Like, it's so intimidating because you don't see it coming. And I think
Exactly.
that's very effective part of and portrayal of his character. Like, Al Pacino in the 70s is not like Al Pacino is now. He delivers some great performances now, but it's like a very different character. You have to typecast a very different character for him. And I just thought that was interesting.
Indeed.
Yeah.
When I first saw that movie and that big freak out there, it's like, holy crap! I forgot that was Al Pacino there for a second. And it's
Yeah.
like he almost plays a completely different actor, or sorry, a
Absolutely.
completely different character in that sense.
Mm.
I read something about how in the third movie, because he had spent so many years smoking, he could no longer go back to that kind of like soft, subdued voice because his
Really?
voice was so ragged from the cigarettes or tobacco. And so they were like, okay, let's just work with it. Like, we can't, we're not gonna do vocal cord surgery. He is who, like, it is what it is.
Yeah, especially considering Al Pacino had problems with how
Mhm.
Part 3 went along. Like, he wouldn't have went with the surgery anyways. He'd be like, no, you get my voice, and that's it.
You know, I
No, you
imagine a
get it,
lot of
you
that was on the set of Scarface.
Yeah.
You know, and the voice he had to do for that character. But also, I think it kind of adds to his character in the third film. It shows just how much time has passed and how much he has changed as a person, and so his voice naturally kind of degrading like that in that way would add to that kind of character. And anyway, we'll
thought-
get into the third film and kind of the misconceptions of it. But I do think that change in his voice adds to his character in that film.
I think it almost has a callback to the way his father and how he sounded at the end. His father was very gravelly at the end of his voice, or pretty much the start of his career at the end, and how Michael never wanted to become his father, and he said, I never wanted to have any business with my father. That's why he ran off to join the military instead of dropping out of college and all that thing there. And at the end, I think I kind of in a way, I kind of brush it off because I'm realizing that Michael is basically becoming Vito in that sense.
Yeah, 100%.
That's fair.
Yeah, the parallels between their characters is really eye opening between the
Yeah.
three
Especially
films.
with the second movie, but we're
Yes.
only talking about the first
Yeah,
one.
let's
which is
focus
a
on
Yeah.
the first
backtrack.
and how the mafia was involved in the making of this movie. Wondering if you guys heard about that. So, they needed money. Studio wasn't giving them much money because they had no faith in production, and it was getting too expensive. So the mafia came in and offered a lot of money, a lot of locations. So the scenes in Italy are apparently actual places where crimes took place, and mafia lords kind of went into hiding after having major crimes done in New York, which of course happens to Al Pacino in the movie. But because of that, let's make some changes to the script. And I think one of the big ones is the fact that they don't call anyone mafia. They don't use the word mafia at all in the movie. They use like guinea wop or guineas, but yeah, so I think that used to be something different, but they just had to throw in guineas at the last minute, which is kind of funny. But the biggest one for me is the whole we don't sell drugs to children. We're very clean in our business. I'm like, I don't buy it. You guys, no offense, but you guys, the mafia lords, especially around that time, probably sold
Yeah, but we
drugs to
got
anybody.
moral standards.
Exactly. And I wanted to ask you guys,
Yeah,
like,
that
how do you?
doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys, like, how does that affect the movie for you? Does it like make it worse? Do you not really care? Because I think it is something worth addressing because it does kind of glorify the mafia in a way. It's not really an accurate
Mhm.
depiction of it compared to something like Goodfellas, for example, or arguably Part 2, which we'll get
Yeah,
into.
like I feel like since The Godfather, on the most part, or the Godfather trilogy is very popular, I feel like a lot of non-Italians are like, "Oh, you're Italian? Oh, ha ha, mafia, ha, hey," and it's like, no, like there's a lot more to like Italy than the
Mhm.
mafia. Like they kind of glamorized it a little bit. Um, but yeah, I feel like the portrayal was like on a Hollywood level, it was, um, I don't know a whole lot about. I'm still learning, so I don't know a whole lot about like mafioso history. But I think for the most part, on what I know, they did a good job. But the it was it was a more almost it was almost like a more, in my opinion, a bit of a cleaner cut version of the
Mhm.
mafia compared to how they actually
Mhm.
were in real life, because they were extremely ruthless. And
And that's saying something for this film. Like I think for the time this pushed boundaries, but you could go back and I'm sure you could dig up even more dirt on how things were, and the
mhm,
fact the mafia was involved, it makes sense. In one way, maybe it adds some authenticity, but obviously they are very interested in probably preserving a positive image for
yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
So this was a question that I was wondering: does the legacy of these films stand to glorify criminal family life, or does it act as a cautionary tale, or is it kind of somewhere in between?
I think it's a little somewhere in between. Like
Yeah,
we definitely see um how sad mafia life can be and how constricting it is, because
Mhm.
um you're bound by laws and family, air quotes, honor and rules, and you know um you can't see this family but you can talk with that family because this family is, we don't talk with this people because they're bad, but like,
yeah. There's a whole hierarchy in ancient
yeah,
history to the whole family history, in the sense.
Mhm.
Going
yeah,
off
like
of
it's an
go
empire
ahead.
built on bloodshed,
Absolutely.
basically.
Yeah. And I imagine there's a lot of making moles out of anthills, where this man insulted me like 30, 40 years ago. So we've been, I'm not gonna butcher the accent, sorry, but
That's okay.
like it's, and this is the crazy thing, and actually this is part two, but like a single insult in one incident can prompt someone else to murder somebody,
Yeah.
and then that creates this endless blood feud for years over
Yes.
something that could have been resolved if they, there's probably other ways of resolving some of these issues they're having that it's just a lot easier to pick up a gun, I guess, um, for
Mhm.
them. But and that's the interesting thing about these films, just showing the ramifications of that, and I think there are people that would watch this and obviously um like see it for see for the wrong things, like you were saying, Julia, that this poster kind of loomed in your dad's basement, and this was something that he was a huge fan of. I've also seen this exact poster in like college dorms, and
Hmm.
and young guys who, you know, probably look at it for all the wrong reasons and
Yep.
glorify it for different things.
Yep.
And so I think people can look at the same film and get completely different meanings out of them. And so I do think it sits somewhere in between. You can look at this as a cautionary tale for, getting roped up in bad business and bad family feuds, or you could see it as a glorification of that.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and like it's one. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you first.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, it's one of those things. Like, once they're in it, you can never leave. And if even if you did try and
Yeah.
leave, they're always gonna keep an eye on you.
Yeah, exactly. I
Absolutely.
feel like that
Yeah.
whole idea is conflicted with Michael. Like his whole
Mhm.
arc in the movie is like, look what they did to this innocent, naive guy who just wanted to live a happy life with his new girlfriend. he's kind of roped back into the crime business, and because he was basically spoiled with everything and given so much responsibility so quickly, he let it get to his head, and it just drove him cold and distant. And we go from like the uniform jacket he wears at the beginning of the wedding to clearly separating him from the rest of the family to a
Yeah.
suit and a tie. Like he looks no different and behaves no differently from the rest of his family. He just let the idea of the crime family consume him. And there are people who are like, Vito grew up from nothing and worked his way to the top. And but meanwhile, Michael, was given everything, and he kind of let that get to his head and drive his family
Yeah.
apart. So there's kind of like that anti-capitalism argument to it. It's like, businessmen who have to work for what they have deserve more respect versus businessmen that are handed everything on a silver platter will just inevitably ruin it to the ground.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with that.
Was there a particular sequence in the film that stands out to you? Because I feel like there's so many different montages and sequences and scenes with the cinematography and the editing that like really stand out. But I want to know your personal favorites.
Is it okay if I go ahead?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay, so,
Don't apologize.
personally, I just love the whole post-World War II, 1940s. What's the
Aesthetic.
aesthetic? I'm also thinking, here, see, what's this? The transatlantic accent and everything about that whole kind of time and everything. Yeah, I actually learned something a little bit off topic here. That transatlantic accent was developed because microphones at the time could not pick up higher, bassier, lower resonant voices. So people developed talking like this here, see? So it was easier to hear them over the radio.
Yeah, that's true. They raised their pitch so you can
Yeah,
notice the higher pitch on the radio.
So
I remember
I just
that.
love the
Had no
whole
idea.
aesthetic to that. Yeah, so I just figured that out a couple days ago actually. But
Mhm.
back on topic,
Yeah.
I love the whole, you see like the big Italian wedding, everything there, and the wedding there is one of my favorite scenes there right in the beginning. Basically, you see all the ladies chatting around, they're making all the jokes. The guy's talking, hey, I got 2 gabagool, I got 2 capricola sandwiches. It's just like, that's delicious. For those uninitiated, the gabagool is a capricola sandwich on a piece of bread, usually some fresh mozzarella, usually a little bit of basil, a little balsamic vinaigrette if we want to get fancy up. But it
Stop
is
making me hungry.
fantastic. And I hope I have enough energy as the old guy singing at that wedding there. Where he's just singing in Italian and he's bouncing and he's dancing.
Antibody,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know the lyrics to that, and I'm not gonna try to butcher that, but I hope that in my years, I hope that I have enough energy to be like him. But
We all do.
hands down, the most iconic scene would, I have to narrow it down to 2, would be the iconic scene where the gentleman wakes up in the morning and he finds his prized stallion in bed with him.
Oh yeah.
With his awful blanket and his
Yes,
shitty bed.
his awful blanket.
Oh my God.
How do you sneak that horse head in there?
I
I
know,
just,
like,
I
shitty
gotta
rich
address
man in
that.
a
Well-
shitty bed.
Yeah.
There's an
And, of
interesting
course-
story behind that. Sorry,
Oh.
Matt, go on with the last
Yeah,
scene. But
and the second one, and it's like tying, it's like neck and neck is look how they massacred my boy, poor
Yes.
Sonny, and all that. It's like, no,
Yeah.
not Sonny, no.
And the father
no!
thinks, and the guy there thinks he's covering up a murder or something. He sees the son, he's like, oh
there's
my
something
god.
like that. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like, I remember the first time
It's
seeing
brutal
that, and I'm
scene.
like, no, I couldn't remember, I couldn't just get over that. So that's all I'd have to say.
Yeah.
But going back to what we were saying before, yes, I can't believe, like, how are you still asleep and someone slides that into your bed?
Yeah.
Well,
That appalls me.
here's the really interesting thing about that. So Francis Ford Coppola later admitted that the way he read the scene for that was a misinterpretation on his part. He thought that he woke up with the horse in bed, but apparently the way it's written in the book is not exactly that. So that was him kind of interpreting that whole thing. Like I guess the horse's head was like put on a pike or something in his room. Like it wasn't put in bed with him, but that was how he misread it, and that's why that scene is what it is. And they're talking about in the behind the scenes how they had to get like a horse's head, like a non-natural one, but they got this old like dusty one left over from some Hollywood set, I guess, and they had to like paint it the right color to match the horse that they show earlier. Just a little interesting kind of tidbit, but that the reason it's in bed with him is because Francis Ford Coppola misread how it was in the book, and that's how he thought it was.
Mm,
But
that's interesting.
yeah,
Even still,
I
it's a good suspenseful lead up. It's like the music. He's crawling over in bed. It's like, what's this on my hand? Huh? That's
Yeah, there's a
weird.
great build
It's
up
on
to
my
it.
sheet. What's this? And he's slowly pulling it
Mm.
away, and the music's building, and he pulls it off. The music stops, and it's just the pure look of absolute terror on this guy's face. And
Ah!
yeah,
and
it's
also
very good dramatically and cinematically.
it
Like it's
is,
very
and it's
impactful.
been
Yeah.
referenced so many times in pop culture. Like I could
Mhm.
go off on a tangent on my fingers here. How many times I've seen that referenced in Family Guy, in South Park, in
Yeah, Family Guy
Futurama, in
especially.
Friends. You name it, it's been referenced.
It's one of those scenes you've seen even if you haven't seen the movie,
The
which
movie is
it
like
was in
that,
my
Absolutely.
very
case.
much so.
Absolutely, including I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse. Look
Yeah,
how they
leave the
massacred
gun,
my boy.
take the cannoli. I think that was straight up reference to The
Absolutely, all the
Simpsons.
Oh,
famous
I
lines. All the famous
okay,
lines.
Ian. Now that you mentioned that line, like drop the gun, take the cannoli, or so,
Like the cannoli. Yep.
it's this shot that I highlighted. So I have
Yes.
this book that I absolutely adore. This is the book that got me into cinematography and filmmaking in general, called The Filmmaker's Eye, and they talk about this one shot in The Godfather that you could say almost encapsulates the whole story in one kind of clear, cohesive image. And this is when they go to shoot the guy off the side of the road, and they're out in this kind of wheat fields, secluded. And far in the distance of the frame, like you see the guy, he's about to get shot in the back from the back seat of the car. But in the shot, you see the Statue of Liberty, and this statue is seen prominently throughout all these films as like a symbol for freedom and whatnot. In this shot, you see the statue facing away, and you could read into that as like, how all these crimes kind of go unseen, kind of, and
Justice
it's
is
kind of,
blind.
yeah, and there's so many ways that you could read into that, but just the art of composing this image where it's very minimal, that anybody could watch this shot out of context and understand kind of the meaning of it.
Mhm.
And
And what's happening? Yeah.
Wow.
yeah, and that's, I really have to praise the cinematography in this film, and I don't want to
Yeah.
get too technical, but
He shot
Gordon
all free
Willis was the
moves. Yeah.
cinematographer.
He's an
Yeah, and actually I have to
excellent,
commend him for
excellent cinematographer.
creating like a consistent look across these films, because there was a 15-year gap between the second one and the third one, but it looks like it
It was
belongs
done
in a
amazingly
chronology.
well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
apparently he was given the nickname the Prince of Darkness because of how underexposed a lot of his scenes were. Like they
Yeah.
deliberately went for a very dark look for these films, and that's one of the things that bugged me for the longest time, because I was watching this on like VHS or some inferior um,
Oh my
DVD
god.
on a dark TV. So it was these films, when you watch them on an inferior format, look terrible almost. Like they become very difficult. But when you actually blow it up to a full screen in a dark room and you have the levels set right, you can see exactly what they were going for. And I think something that gets lost in translation when you put it on different formats
Yeah.
is actually what happens anytime widescreen movies go to VHS. I always say, look how they massacred my boy. They cropped the frame. But also the light levels, like, like this film can seem very dark and hard to look at if you watch it in bad with bad environment with bad settings. But when you see it properly, it looks gorgeous, and you can see exactly what they were going for with these dark scenes. And that was a really risky move back then too, because you know they would only tolerate a certain amount of underexposure back in those days. But and also the way that he lit Vito Corleone, he had the light angled at a slightly higher angle than you would normally, so that you see more shadows under his eyes, and that kind of made his figure look more skeletal
Gaunt.
and more
Yes.
menacing,
Yeah, more
Not to
more
intimidating.
gaunt.
mention,
So
not to
anyway,
mention
all this
him
to
puffing
say is just amazing
constantly.
how these subtle light changes and these subtle choices in the cinematography really influence the characterization and how we view it.
Yeah, the lighting is some of the best I've ever seen in the film, especially in part two. There's a shot with Michael in the epilogue in particular that I gotta talk about later, but I really want to talk about it, but I gotta save that for another time. And that was also something the studios hated, because they had the exact same concerns you had, Devin, that home video would be screwed over by this dark lighting. Like, nobody would be able to watch it on their TVs at home because it's so dark and they couldn't see anything. So the cinematographer and Francis Ford Coppola basically had to fight to keep that style in the movie. And
That sense of discomfort almost adds to it because you're
yeah,
supposed to
adds
feel
so
a
much
little
to the
unnerved
atmosphere.
by what they're doing. It's the atmosphere. It's this intentional dark atmosphere they're creating for these films. So, it absolutely feeds into it.
Absolutely. And for my favorite sequence in the film personally, gotta go with the scene where Michael kills Sollozzo. Like, that is a fantastic build up. There's
Yes.
the little mistakes he makes are my favorite part about it, because it adds so much tension. Like, he was supposed to get out and kill him right away, but he doesn't. He hesitates and sits at the table. He takes too, he looks too suspicious. He goes to the bathroom at the wrong time, and he has to check him again. He takes too long to find the gun. He doesn't drop the gun right away. Like, so many details that make it so much more believable and intense. It's just such a perfect scene, perfectly lit. I even like the use of the language barrier. Like, that was something that pissed a lot of people off, but I kind of like the message behind the language not being translated, because Michael isn't focused on the conversation.
Exactly.
It's a way of telling the viewer that he's just focused on killing Sollozzo, and he just doesn't care about what he has to say except for one specific moment. And he just kind of rolls his eyes and blows it off, like, okay, like, you're just full of shit. I'm gonna grab a gun and kill you now. Like, it's so
Yeah, that's what I was
perfectly
wondering
expressive.
about. Is there is that moment where he speaks Italian, but it's not translated. I'm wondering if you know any Italian, Julie. Did you know what he was saying? But
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too.
I don't know what he was saying, but he was saying something along the lines of, "Oh, like, you can't trust this guy. Don't worry about him." Something along that. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
was
the
it
full
about the
message.
dirty cop
They
they were
were
talking about?
something about the
Sorry?
families and their
Oh,
world.
okay.
That's about it. That's all I could pick up, is that not to trust the guy. It's time to stop this fighting here.
Yeah.
They could work something out, and then
Yeah, exactly. And I think the only part I got was he said to Cozy, and he looks over at the cop, like, he was probably like, how do I say this, or how do I put this? Like, that's the only one part I could kind of understand. But there's so much you could see in the actor's face that just tells him everything that you need to hear anyways.
absolutely.
yeah, I think you made a good point that they probably intentionally didn't translate those just because to put you in
100%.
Michael's head mindset that he isn't really focused on this conversation. He's working up the nerve to kill them both, basically. So the
Yeah.
I never
conversation's
thought
like,
of it that way. I never heard of that thing, but hearing that now, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it adds so much to the scene. Julia, what's your favorite scene or sequence in the movie?
Please.
So I'm gonna add on to the scene where he kills Sollozzo, because that scene is gold. And I just want to say, one part that made me guffaw out loud was when a cop, he's like a whole pack of Wonder Bread. He is super white. Doesn't he's like Wonder Boy, Wonder Bread,
That
Wonder
was
Boy.
Well, that's the
Italian
Italian food here.
what's that really
he mentioned
white
cake, and
Italian
you don't know
bread?
what he's
The
talking
logic-
about.
Oh my
What-
god.
What's that really white Italian bread?
So
Tried to
and
deal.
he's just oblivious. He's looking at the menu, and he's like, "How's the veal here?" And Sollozzo's just like, "Try. It's the best
Right,
in the
it's
city.
best
Have
in
the
the
veal."
city.
Yeah, and then he says, "I'm
Sollozzo
gonna
has
speak."
like no idea what's coming to him.
Yeah, I know.
And
And he says, "I'm
he's
gonna
like, "Oh,
speak
yeah, try the
Italian."
veal."
He's like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." I'm like, "You don't want to understand what they're saying?" But
I
yo,
kind of wish you would have said it's to die for. I'd be like,
that would have been too much. That feels like something the Ferd movie would do. But
Yeah.
this one,
ah.
yeah.
But one of my other favorite scenes was when I forgot the name of Connie's husband.
Carlo.
Oh, that
Carlo,
piece of
yes.
shit.
They're actually good friends outside the movie, which is kind of funny.
So, Carlo, we flash back at some point in the movie to when Carlo and Connie are living in their New York apartment, and basically Carlo is like being like verbally abusive to Connie.
Yeah.
He's like throwing stuff around, and like she's really upset. And I think he slaps her or like punches her in the face.
Oh,
I
he
forget
takes
what
his
he
belt.
does.
He straight up takes out his
He
belt.
takes his belt and he starts beating the crap out of her.
And she has to
and
corner herself
pacing
of the
around,
knife into the bathroom.
And
It's so
it's
visceral.
sad because we see the bathroom door like almost shut, and we just hear Connie screaming and Carlo yelling, And then Sonny finds out that his little sister, I think that's his little sister, yeah.
Yep.
Sonny finds out that his little sister is being beat up by Carlo again. And then we see Sonny who makes his way over to the apartment and just drags Carlo into the street and starts kicking the absolute crap out of him. It was so satisfying. I'm like, yeah, Sonny, you kick that dirty old bastard.
It was
so good.
I made a mistake. So we don't see Carlo beat her up. That's the second time she beats him up, and then Sonny gets shot. This was like after the fact, and he's like, "No, please don't hurt him." I was like, "Oh, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna make my sister a widow?" Yeah, I'm sorry. I saw you there.
It's weird. All the scenes
like
kind of clump together. I mean, it's a 3-hour movie. We each 3-4 hour movies. We watched 3 of those to get ready for this episode, so it's a lot of information here.
It's a lot of stuff. I keep mixing up scenes from other movies.
Yeah,
but
I'm sorry.
They really don't feel their runtime. I feel like they just go by, which is
the
really...
first two, for sure.
Yes, first. Yes, the first.
You're not bearing the lead on that at all, are you?
No, we try to be impartial, but not for this one.
Okay. I'm sorry.
But no, I think that really stands to the quality of these films. Is that people watch and rewatch these films over and over, and they're really long movies. And for most people, that'd be like insufferable to sit through like 2.5 or 3 hours of stuff. But these films just, they don't feel their runtime, and that really it speaks to the quality of them. And the violence in these films are really
100%.
Gun sounds are fantastic for the time period.
Yeah, like when Carlo was being beat up by Sonny. You know how I feel like in North American action movies, there's like a lot of like cuts to like here and there, and like everything's like all close up and like really fast. But like we see him like being like dragged out into the street, and it's like a full panning shot of just like Sonny just like literally just like kicking him, punching him, and then Carlo trying to get away, and Sonny's just like walking behind him slowly, and then he pushes him down the stairs to like this basement apartment door, and I'm like, that is sad. R.I.P. Carlo.
Yeah, because of the way it's shot, you're just constantly wondering, when does it end? When's he gonna stop?
It's not gonna end.
Yeah.
I think he bites his fingers at one point too, because he's hanging on. He's like hanging on to the rail, and he's like not letting go, so he bites his fingers. Like just details like that. Like these are not pretty fights. These are very ugly. The domestic violence is just awful, but I think it's very like revealing, and it shows the kind of
especially for the time. Like there's a scene where Carlo gets like zip tied at the end of the movie, and his feet are like breaking through the window, and there's like really nasty sound effects. Like it's so visceral. Like
I don't remember that one.
Yeah,
well,
which
was that?
That's when Carlo dies at the end of the movie. Clemenza's like, "Hey, Carlo, how's it going?" And he chokes him to death, and his feet kick through the window and break the glass. Like that's such an effective scene, and also a good way to cover up.
Yes, kill him.
Yeah, and that's like a good way to cover up any potentially bad effects too, because it's like we can't really see what's happening through the glass, but there's enough left to the imagination there that we could just put it together. I think that's a big reason why that's the most memorable hit scene to me. There's no like somewhat dated like gunshot wound sound effects or cuts or anything like that, because the action is covered up just enough that we don't really see the awful thing behind the scenes.
I think showing just enough restraint in the camera work. Like they don't have to have a close up of every kill, and it works in their favor, because then they can, get away with not. They can throw their punches. They can really, he can really like not look like he's having to choke the guy if he's kicking the windshield as well. Just having the camera back up, and also shows how distant this violence is. Like people,
especially to Michael.
Yeah, like it's distant. Like Michael's not involved. The whole sequence where his son is getting I forget if it's the son or the daughter, but he's baptizing one of his children.
Little Sofia Coppola.
Well, yeah, Sofia Coppola. And while he's baptizing his child, he has all these the heads of the families getting murdered. That whole montage sequence is absolutely iconic, and
that's my favorite hit scene.
There you go.
That's up
there.
It's
just cut back and forth with the bells and the chanting, and just Michael
crying,
just giving the vows, and it's just everyone just blang, 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 just cutting back and forth. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and the symbolism
I think it shows
behind that. Yeah, sorry.
It's like the cognitive dissonance that he has to develop to
Absolutely, that's the
to
perfect
become the leader.
description.
Like he is cleansing himself of sin, like figuratively, while also committing like the worst stuff and trying to best his enemies. So that's the kind of character he becomes. That's when he really becomes the
The
new.
Godfather.
Yeah, exactly.
Agreed. And yeah, exactly. There's the symbolism behind that too, where he's becoming a symbol. He's becoming a godfather for Connie's daughter, but he's also
Mhm.
becoming a godfather in the crime world officially. Just that symbolism alone, and the editing, and the tension, and the build-up is so perfectly executed. Like, there's a reason that scene is referenced so often and parodied so often in other movies. It's just it's earned its iconic state in cinema, which is kind of something I was worried about this movie going in. Or it's like, is it just overrated? Is everyone parodying and referencing this movie because it's famous? Like, I feel like some movies around the time kind of were, but I genuinely enjoyed this film. Don't 100% agree on the pacing, admittedly. Like, I always felt like the second act, while it does have some great scenes, the look how they massacred my boy and the stuff that happens with Sonny and Carlo is great. I don't really buy the relationship between Michael and Apollonia, and it wouldn't bother me so much if so many people didn't treat it as such an important moment. Like, oh, when Apollonia died, Michael died with her, and that was the only woman he truly loved. I was like, was
I
he? Like, I don't really.
Completely forgot about the fact that he marries another woman in Sicily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just glossed over. And
Exactly.
it's just like we're waiting in Sicily. Like, what's the point of all this? Like,
Yeah. And what do they see in each other? Like,
That's
is
a
she
perfect
hot?
description
Is
of
that
what
it?
goes on in Sicily.
okay, they're playing the theme song over and over and over again. Great. Okay, I need
It's
to
a great
remind
theme.
myself that I'm
And
watching Godfather.
his infidelity is perfectly conveniently buried by the fact he dies in a car explosion.
Yeah, exactly. And it's never brought up again in the first or the second movie. It's only until the third movie where they bring it up. And I was like, yes, finally, somebody's addressing this plotline exists. And Julia,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask real quick. The
Yeah.
relationship is so undercooked in the movie. Like, the whole time I'm like, what do you see in each other? Like, what's your chemistry here? I'm wondering if
Wait, sorry,
maybe
can you repeat the question?
did the book flesh out the relationship between Michael and Apollonia better than the movie
Oh,
did?
I'm not that far yet.
Okay. Because
Yeah, I'm not
that's
that
the
far
whole
yet.
time I was thinking, like...
But that does concern me as well.
Yeah. Because I also read, apparently Francis Ford Coppola had a director's cut that was only 2 hours, like just over 2 hours, and they actually asked him to add more content to the film. I'm kind of wondering if that stuff was extra content, because it does kind of have that shooting at a different location, shooting a different day, different season kind of feel to it. I almost wonder if that was kind of thrown in there.
It's also weird how quickly they got together because like he
I
literally
know.
just sees her like walking around and he's like instantly infatuated.
She's hot.
And then and then they happen to be where her father works and he doesn't like the fact that his girl's getting eyed by these people. Then the second he said, "Oh, I'm Michael Corleone and this is who I am," suddenly he's okay with it.
Yeah,
And
I guess he is a Corleone. He does have a pretty high stance, but people hate this trope, and that's the trope of like the lovers that hate each other at first, but then grow to care each other. But I think it could work in that instance. Like at first, she's like, "No, you're kind of creepy. You're only doing this with my fam. I'm only doing this because my family wants me to." But then maybe they could develop like a genuine love for each other. Like just give
Yeah.
me something. Give me something
it,
where I can
it
feel
feels
for
like
death.
a business transaction, like ultimately between the father and Michael to marry her off.
Yeah.
Like, plus she looks really young. I don't know.
He
some
was pretty young,
creepiness
like-
there.
I feel like they might have been trying to show Michael attempting at having like a second
Normal life, yeah.
like a life outside of the crime world. But which is funny because it's in Sicily, which is basically mafia town.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, why? If you want to have a life outside of the mafia, why are you in Sicily? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I
But,
mean, it seems like he was flexing his family's name too. Like he's saying a lot of people will pay for the information that I'm a Corleone, and like he's really waving his
Aren't you in
nepotism
hiding?
card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't you in hiding? Why are you
Like,
just
you should be
telling this
somewhere
random
else,
people?
not
Yeah,
Sicily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe northern Italy.
Yeah.
because they are.
So I just want to make sure I get my geography right. So Sicily is like the rock that the boot of Italy is tripping over, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
They're
sorry.
across from Calabria, which is
Gotcha.
where my dad is
And
from.
Oh, right on. And
Yeah.
is it true the waters all around Italy and Sicily and Malta are like 10% olive oil? Or
You
damn.
ask
did
me that
I?
question again, I'm gonna scream.
No,
God damn it! I'm sorry.
it's in our blood.
I can't help
I'm
it.
joking.
Right.
I'm quite sure it's not true, and if it is, that's a waste of olive oil, and they will be
Yeah.
very upset.
Come on, man. Put that shit in your
No,
pasta and ravioli.
No, that's my satirical joke on misinformation on the internet.
Goodbye, everybody.
It's all
Well
good.
done. And
It's probably not gonna be
I
the
think
last we're gonna hear.
that part of the story just really dragged for me, and um, Marlon Brando's great, but pop culture kind of made him a joke for me. I had a hard time taking him seriously in certain scenes. The look how they
Right.
massacred my boy. It's a good scene, but meme culture's mean that to the point where it was just kind of funny. And I know it's a film from the 70s, but man, some of the ADR in this movie was rough. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
this. The I taught the Barzini with
So
Mo Green.
ADR, that's like additional dialogue recording where they record
Yeah,
dialogue
after
after
the
the fact.
Yeah.
And like yeah, the splicing is pretty obvious sometimes when
It's pretty bad.
in scenes.
Yeah,
You can tell the
especially when
audio
they're
quality just
driving
changes.
and you see
Oh
them
my
like you
God.
see shots of them driving and they aren't even moving their mouths. It's like, come on, have them like mimic dialogue a bit, but it's more forgivable in these movies because they're from the 70s. It's again, we'll talk about it later, but
Yeah, the technology for re-recording and editing these things after the fact was very limited compared to today.
absolutely.
So
It's more
you can
forgivable.
expect some rudimentary edits in these films,
Mhm.
especially there's another Italian subgenre, but like giallo films, like the horror films made in Italy at that time,
Yeah.
especially. Yeah, some bad and
Suspiria.
interesting.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
Suspiria! I love that
Oh,
movie.
shit
Yeah.
about Suspiria.
I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it's
It's a
very good.
very pretty
Oh,
movie.
it's fantastic.
It's very pretty.
It's one of the most beautiful horror films ever
Yeah.
made.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a accurate
It's very
description.
pretty.
my
But
dear.
yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
want to see that in its original language because I feel like the dub kind of ruined the movie for me. It's like it just feels like a bad martial arts film.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Always
Yeah,
go with
that-
the subtitles, ma'am.
yeah.
Always.
Yeah, that's the other thing when Italians try to make movies that aren't in Italian. I mean, the English can be a little
jarring.
a
sure.
bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah,
But
that
anyway.
could come with any language
And
barrier.
I go on a slight tangent just to play on what Ian said about Marlon Brando being memed.
Please.
Good for
All
it.
right, go ahead.
Okay, so
Go
it's a
for
very quick one. Okay, so long ago, in I think it was the year 2010. Oh God, 2010. That was a horrible year. Um, so there was a movie that came out called Jack and Jill. It's an Adam Sandler movie. And Al Pacino was in it.
Don
And then
Pacino!
Al Pacino was basically this actor who was like they were trying to get so Adam Sandler's character is like this marketing guy, and he's trying to get Al Pacino, who actually plays Al Pacino in the movie, to sponsor Dunkachino, which
Yes.
is this
So
Dunkin'
meta.
Donuts new coffee, and we just see Al Pacino, and he's like, "What's my name? Dunkachino."
He's
No.
dancing?
In the comments, he like spins around and does flips and stuff, and it's terrible. And I don't know if he does a flip, but it's
Obvious stunt
I'm
doubles,
searching
yeah.
it
no,
up right
no.
as
And
we
then
speak. Put it in the chat. So
Please.
and then we see and then we see the comments on like the YouTube clip because you can search it on YouTube, and everyone is just like, "My boy, look what they did to my boy."
Yeah, that's a fair assumption.
my favorite line is "Say hello to my chocolate blend." Dunkachino.
Did you hear the Duke Nukem version of that?
Seriously.
Yeah, did you hear the Duke Nukem version of that song? They just got the actor of Duke Nukem to sing it. It's like, what's
John
my
St.
name?
John to do that? Oh
Dunkachino."
my gosh.
It was pretty funny.
I love John St.
I'll
John.
find a link for that. But yeah, besides that, I have no other problems with The Godfather. The first and
Yeah.
third acts are almost perfect. If it was just the first and third act, this movie would be like a 9.5 or a 10. But as it stands for me, second act does drag a bit. Certain characters didn't really work for me, but still a great movie. 8.5 out of 10. What about you guys?
I think it's a terrific film that's only been slightly diminished by meme culture and frat boy culture.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a solid film that for its time really took a hard look into the mafioso lifestyle and all these familial kind of bloodlines being shed and exposed. That yeah, with every kind of rewatch, there's more you can get out of it. Like I like I like what Matt was bringing up about the food and all these little details that I might not pick up on being someone who's not Italian. Um, but no, there's more that I can
Well,
appreciate. The more
well, I
that
just cringed hearing you saying that. I just,
Yeah,
I
same.
cringed. I cringed as I said it. I was instant regret. Don't worry.
Okay, I
I'm
found Dunkachino. I am posting it in the chat.
All right,
Oh
Devin.
no.
Good timing.
What's my name?
But no, it's
Dunkchino.
I think it's a great film. And I'm gonna give it a solid 9.
Nice. Yeah, that's
Right
fair.
on.
Julia?
Yeah, what about
I
you?
will give it a solid 9. As well, I feel that I have a strong connection with these movies because being a Southern Italian, um, it's centered around Southern Italian culture, specifically the mafia, which is not all about Southern Italian culture. Just a footnote. Um, but yeah,
Nope.
no, it's so well done. I love the music, the lighting, the
Oh yeah,
the
we
casting,
didn't even
just
talk about the music.
Oh man.
everything, and yeah, well done, well done.
Yeah, nice. Matt,
Bravo.
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 Similar to my cohorts here, I am going to give the film a 9 out of 10. I love it to death. Being a Godfather myself, being raised Roman Catholic, it's very stays very true to the whole themes of family and staying close with each other and everything here. I feel like it's very well done. I am going to retort and say that it is benefited by all of pop culture and all of the memes. It makes it that much better.
Hot take.
Excuse a lot of you.
Mm.
And I stand by that. Thank you very much.
There's two ways of looking at it. And speaking of two ways of looking at something, we got a
Hey.
second movie. Matt, would you like to introduce Godfather Part 2?
Absolutely,
Duh.
my friends. Oh, do I have to get out the music again and do the?
But this time, do Michael Corleone.
Do it.
Don't do
Do it.
Don Corleone.
How do I do Michael Corleone? It's basically just like
do younger version of Michael Corleone.
Younger version of Corleone. Okay. Just give me one sec. Where's my phone?
We're leaving this in.
Okay.
Just like angry Al Pacino. It's up to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's that boy?
You just gotta throw in a.
You won't
No,
take
no,
my
that's how
cakes
you
away.
clear your throat.
Sorry.
Godfather Part 2 basically starts off with the story of Vito Corleone when he was only 9 years old and his entire family was massacred. I realize that I'm going more like Christopher Walken right here with this whole impression.
Keep going.
It's not really working.
Don't stop.
Just keep it going. Keep it going.
Don't stop.
So we bounce back between both Michael and Vito, but we see Vito as a young man making a name for himself, portrayed by a lovely Robert De Niro, who does portray a bit of a uncanny resemblance to a younger Marlon Brando. But this story picks up after Michael assassinated all the 5 family head members and the remunerations from his horrible actions. Okay, how was that?
Bravo.
Bravo, grazie.
Bravo. That was fantastic. I applaud you, sir. Yeah, Godfather Part 2. The sequel nobody thought was going to happen. The sequel where Francis Ford Coppola had complete control. Like, the studios didn't bug him. The Mafia didn't even bug him this time. I believe they were basically like, you know what? You made the first movie. We're going to trust you. And because of that, this film kind of felt more honest to me. It's more dark. It's colder than the first film. But I think it's so much better than the first film in almost every way. I think the representation of the Mafia is more morally ambiguous and interesting. The new characters are fantastic. The music is still great. The lighting maybe even better in this film. The shot of Michael just slinking out of the shadows near the end of the movie where he sees Fredo get killed and just slink back is so incredibly effective. And with a perfectly timed bird on top of that, this is one of my favorite movies ever made, and one easily the best sequel I've ever seen. But I want to see what you guys think, because a lot of people were kind of mixed on this movie when it first came out. Like, people either loved it and said it was on par with the first film, or people said it just didn't hold a candle to it. I'm wondering if you guys think it's better or worse than the first film, and why you feel that way. Start with you, Julie and Matt, because I believe you guys are new to the sequels.
Okay, well, I
Go ahead,
thought
please.
there was definitely more, whatchamacallit. It was like, there was definitely more zhuzh in the second movie. Like, we really see Michael coming into his role as Don Corleone. And, he's no longer like we see in the first movie, he's no longer that timid, quiet, well-mannered college kid. He is now a full-fledged Don, and he's ordering a lot of dirty orders, having people carry out dirty deeds, and like we kind of see him coming into his own in that sense. So I thought that was really well played out. I found that maybe I gotta watch it again, but I found that there were a bit of story tangents that I didn't quite follow.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of like moved back and forth a little bit, but
Oh yeah.
like I said, maybe I gotta watch it again. If I watch it a third time, it will probably make more sense. But overall, I thought it was well done. And we see Michael evolve into a raging mafia boss, and become even more jaded than he was before.
It lose
Oh
all
yeah,
of his
like his
humanity.
Yeah.
he seems very emotionless kind of through a
Yeah,
lot of
like
this
he's
film.
very
Almost
cold.
he's very stoic. He seems like he really has to put on a hard kind of face to deal with everything that he's doing. And yeah, like the parallel cross-cutting, I remember first time watching this like years ago, and I just didn't get a lot of it. Like there's a lot that happens.
Yes.
Watching it again, it almost felt like I'm seeing it for the first time, just because there was so much that happened that I just didn't remember about. But I think I was really able to appreciate it this time, like seeing kind of where Vito came up from and why he does what he does. The fact that his family was massacred, like his older brothers swore revenge after their
Yes.
father was killed.
Yeah.
Man, who kills a child already?
Yeah.
Like
In
off
a
the bat,
Hollywood
just
movie,
9-year-old.
especially.
A 9-year-old.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then his mom has to convince him, or tries to convince the boss that his youngest son is too dim-witted to try to carry on
So
revenge.
sad. It's so sad.
Oh
So
my God, it's such
It
a
was
heartbreaking
heartbreaking.
scene.
Mm-hmm.
She
And
was
it
like,
was,
"Please don't kill my only son. He's the only one I have left." And he's like,
no,
just sips a glass of wine. No,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
no.
Nah, I don't feel like it. I don't
so
think that's quite all I
gratifying.
want, but
So
It,
gratifying to watch him get gutted at the end.
yeah,
oh my God.
Oh,
great hit scene for sure. What about you, Matt?
100%.
What'd you think?
like I said, it was the first time for me watching the Godfather Part 2. I absolutely love the first one. I absolutely love the second one. I would say I would prefer the the second of the two for the story purposes, but for the first one, I enjoy it just for a classic. You know, there's all the famous lines. We
Mm,
don't get any Marlon Brando in the scene, but we do get Robert De Niro, which, like I said, is a very good comparison. Robert De Niro looks uncannily like a young Marlon Brando. So
yeah,
Oh,
I
it's
will say
near
that
perfect casting.
that is
perfectly
a
mimics his
perfect
voice.
casting choice. And
Hmm.
Yeah.
it's great to see him coming up, him starting from the ground up. And like I said, my grandparents were immigrants coming over after the Second World War. They came over with one suitcase and $100 in their pockets, and this whole story just hits right close to the fields, because that's basically how a lot of us came to this beautiful country, or at least into a country of this sense.
Hmm.
And I loved seeing the similarities between Vito and Michael, and seeing just how dark Michael has turned out. The ending scene, it's just everything. Just there's not a moment in this movie that leaves you wanting more, or leaves you
Wanting less.
just, yeah,
There's not a
exactly.
wasted scene.
I agree.
Yes, thank
I
you.
think that's
Thank you.
why
That's the perfect way of putting it.
everybody complains about the length of this movie. Like it's almost 3.5 hours long, but I don't know. I feel like this is the only
I didn't
movie
mind
that
it.
didn't
I didn't
drag for
mind
me in the trilogy at all. Like it just flies by. When the intermission hit, I was like, "It's intermission. We're halfway done the movie already. Like this is insane. Like,
Yeah, I
it's
was
just
surprised
flying
it had
by."
an intermission. I'm like, ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, I know. Product of the time. It may have been like a mandatory studio decision too. Like, nah, if you're gonna make a movie this long, please give people a chance to
Hey,
take a
it
piss
reminded
break.
me to go up and get a snack and get some water. So go for
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. So, uh, we asked this question about the first Godfather, like most memorable sequence, and I feel like we gotta ask for each film now. What was the most memorable sequence in Part Two for you guys? Because there's a lot of them in this one too.
I started last time, so Lady Julia, please, the floor is yours.
Sure,
Take it
yeah.
away.
I definitely have to say it's the all-time shocking slash favorite scene that everybody will talk about. The scene where Fredo is near the end, where Fredo is fishing alone in the boat at dusk, and he's saying the Our Father prayer.
Hail Mary.
And then he gets
Oh
shot.
man.
That scene
Yeah.
just that shook me to my core, and like we just see Michael at the window, and he's watching this whole thing happen, and Michael just slowly turns away, and just sits down.
Yeah, he
Not a
just
frickin' word.
links
And I'm
back
like,
into
oh
the
my
darkness.
god!
It's so horrifying to watch, and
Yeah.
and Fredo finishes his prayer. We don't hear him finish the prayer, but there's just a few seconds after we cut away, and
Yep.
we just know
Yeah.
that the guy hitting him was willing to wait for him to finish because he kind of had a sense of respect for the guy too, is how I interpreted it.
Yeah. And it
Is-
was also a little sad for me, a little more sad.
Oh, I
for me
cried the
because
first time I watched it.
I thought Fredo was an absolute sweetheart.
There it is. There it is.
I was like, he is so sweet. He's a little mama's boy. I just want to give him a gabagool
He
and a
doesn't
big
know
kiss
any
on the
better.
forehead.
Yeah,
Big cup of cool.
And
But
you
he-
feel
but
bad
he,
for him.
But he betrayed Michael. He betrayed
He
Michael.
did,
didn't
but like he was
knowingly
put between
betray
a
him.
rock and a hard place.
Yeah, he didn't
He
knowingly
didn't know he
betray
was
him.
gonna pull a hit. I mean, man, Fredo is such a misunderstood character, unfortunately, in their
Yeah.
family. And there was also a parallel between him and the third film. Excuse me. But yeah, no, that scene really caught me off guard. And this screenshot I just shared, you just see the guy pulling the gun behind his head, and it's just barely in frame. Like they almost miss it in the shot as he's zooming in on the lens.
How many times did they
And-
time
Paying
that
attention
shot?
to it, you can't
Yeah.
dismiss it.
I did miss it the first time. I was surprised when I heard the gun go off in the next shot. I'm like, wait, what happened to him? And then I went back and I saw he was pulling a gun. I'm like, oh my god, I missed that entirely.
But to be fair, the minute I heard that they pulled the kid out of the boat and there was someone else driving the boat, it's like, yeah, this is where you're gonna die.
And he
This is
knows
where you're
too.
gonna die.
Like
it
his
makes-
oh
it
shit was
makes
so
sense.
genuine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for him too. Like John Cazale should have been nominated for an Oscar for this movie, and I really don't know why he wasn't. And
Oh,
Hey,
100%.
John Cazale was kind of an underrated actor. He also died too soon. Like I think
way too soon. He had the same disease that he did in the movie, if I'm not mistaken,
Oh wow.
and that caused him to die way too soon. He was in 5 movies, all of them nominated for Best Picture. There was The
Wow.
Conversation, The Godfather 1 and 2, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter. All
Wow.
terrific
Oh, yeah.
performances. He just left this huge legacy behind.
I gotta
It's
watch
so
The
insane.
Deer Hunter again, man. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful movie.
Julia, you stole
Oh.
my answer, and I hate you for that, but
Sorry.
that's all right.
Alright.
That's right.
I also just want to quickly flop back. Sorry, I just want to also
please, go
quickly
ahead.
flop back to Fredo in the first movie. Like you know the scene where they're out shopping. It's Christmas time,
Mhm.
and Vito wants to get some oranges at the market, but then he gets shot,
Yeah, and he fumbles the
Yes.
gun. Like,
and he
it's so
fumbles,
terrible.
and Fredo is just like Vito's lying there, and then Fredo's just sitting on the sidewalk, and he's just like rocking himself back and forth, and like he's like. And then he just goes, "Ah, Papa!" And like he just doesn't know what to do. And I'm like, "Oh my God, Fredo, you sweet boy.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't
it's-
deserve this."
We love.
He
He
is
really
the
does.
epitome of the Italian's mama's boy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mama's little gabagool. He's just you little.
that's all I
little-
wanted to say.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. And Frankie
Um,
doesn't deserve that either. Frankie was
Yeah.
just such a great new character. He was basically written in to replace Clemenza, and he just has so much personality. He's really funny too. which I wasn't expecting the second time watching it. And the scene where he's in court, he's like, "The FBI tells me this, and the FBI tells me that," and he said, "Sure, why not?" Like, I laughed so hard at that. I was
Like,
not
what
ready for that.
And the guy beside him is just like,
What
oh my
the-
god, what
And the
have I
FBI
done?
agent
I
is like,
can't
"God
believe
damn
I
it, you
covered."
fucking read this in court, you piece of shit!" Like, it's so fun. Such a horrifying scene too. Like Michael with the brother, just that subtle fret and flex.
that was
That's one of my
good.
favorite scenes
That
in the
was
movie
good.
too. And
Yeah.
the
I
way
don't
those
know.
scenes were shot was so convincing. Like, it looked like behind the scenes footage of like courtrooms in the 70s. Like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Like, something about the way it's lit, like how all of the extras are used,
It's
and the
spooky.
ambience, like people coughing in the background. Like, there's something really tangible about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say either that scene or the scene where Frankie is talking to Robert Duvall, and they're basically he's subtly telling them, "You should kill yourself," without actually telling them, "You should kill
I
yourself." That also
was
made me
just
cry the
about
first
to
time I watched
mention
it.
that one. God damn it.
It's
But
so
no, like,
perfect.
And,
well,
and Devin,
I
it looks
also
like
love in that.
you
Sorry, go on.
spoiled mine as well for that one there as well.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
God damn.
in the
I
first
was
bit
gonna
with Don
mention it's
Fanucci.
like he's talking to him and he's talking about our family empire is like the Roman Empire,
Yeah.
and everybody knows how well things went for them.
The
Yeah.
minute he said that,
Exactly.
he's like, oh god, I know what he's insinuating there. It's like, oh
Mhm.
jeez.
Yeah, and he reminds him about his brother and like how much they're in his care. Like, if you do not do this, we will get to your brother. Like, we know
Oh yeah.
exactly what he's doing and where he is. It's so horrifying and sad, and the
It,
way the cinematography is framed with the jail cell, and how it kind of it makes they give Robert Duvall more headroom than Frankie, so Frankie just looks more trapped in this situation, despite the fact that they're kind of
mhm.
both locked in the same scenario. It's really
Yeah,
really effective subtle filmmaking.
it's like Robert Duvall has an out and the other guy doesn't, and
Exactly.
I love the subtle framing of that too. Like, this feels like they just showed up there with a camera, but where they place it and how they place the actors speaks so much about the scene. And I love how they just take available spaces and make it work for the dialogue and the scene that they're telling. And it's just very simple camera placement and composition, but that can speak so much to what's going on. And that's the art of filmmaking right there, and I love it.
Yeah, there's
Um,
so many scenes like that in the movie.
there's a couple shots that I just screen grab random things through this because I
Yeah.
was watching on VLC DVD, and I love that you can just key command for screen grabs. I love when he shoots the one guy and the towel that he wrapped the gun with is on fire.
Yes. So much attention to
And
detail.
then
That whole scene of Don Felucci's assassination in De Festa is my pick for the most memorable scene. There's so
Good
many
pick.
different factors with that. There's the little shots, like you said. There's the towel on fire. There's the scene of the actual festa. Him walking through in his big white jacket. Oh, kiss my hand. Oh, Don Felucci. Buongiorno, buongiorno. I'm the bad guy. Look at me. It's just perfect. I've
Mamma
seen it
mia.
referenced. I have seen it referenced in Family Guy. I've seen it referenced in like Duke Nukem games. It's insane how fundamental this scene is. And sorry,
mhm.
I went on a bit of a tangent there. I
No,
No,
that's
apologize.
no, it's a
fine.
good tangent. But
Yeah.
I also love this statue of Jesus that they're carting around with all the money taped
I
to it.
know, right?
Yeah.
That,
Great
like, I mean,
symbolism.
subtle, not so subtle kind of symbolism, but there is I think a passage of the Bible that uh Catholics observe that Protestants don't, and there's other divisions that don't look at it. It's the Apocrypha, and in it there is a passage that basically is the justification that you could financially buy your way out of going to hell. I don't know. It just made me think of that
Yeah.
and how
And
money can be
Well, scare
tied to.
tactics.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
and but it's the idea how some people think that being well off financially equals morally good.
yeah, and
Yeah.
this was kind of Don Felucci's wake up call to that in a way. And yeah, and I mentioned earlier the theme of like history repeating itself, and what you mentioned earlier with the Roman Empire is like we were like the Roman Empire, but the Roman Empire fell apart, just like our family is going to fall apart, just like how Vito's family fell apart. Like, that's why the parallels to flashbacks didn't bother me at all, because it all felt crucial to the story. Like, they'll go from Michael dealing with a family tragedy to Vito dealing with a family tragedy when they find out what happened to Fredo. and his birth defects. Like, every cut to the flashback has a purpose. They're not just wasting time or giving exposition for the sake of filling in a runtime. Like, it all serves a point. Which is why the flashbacks don't bother me at all in this movie, like it did for some people.
Yeah, I wasn't considering the final K's betrayal scene at the end, because that was just, it was a little I was not expecting that.
Hard to watch,
If
yeah.
if I'm being truthfully honest, I was not expecting that. I
Such
was
a
not
great
expecting that.
terrific
The
acting
whole,
from
yeah. Will Ferrell meme, wow, that escalated quickly. That was just
that applies, yeah. And
Oh, God.
Not an abortion.
Yeah.
It
It was an abortion, Michael, just like our marriage is an abortion, and the venom
Oh,
just
God.
receiving in his eyes. You're just like, oh my god, dude, what are you
He
gonna
wanted
do?
to kill her at that very moment.
Oh,
he,
very
like,
much
he
so.
wanted to kill her.
wanted to go full
But there's
Al
an interesting
Pacino.
layer to that scene I want to mention real quick, because he could kill her. He could have someone
could.
straight up assassinate her, but he doesn't. And I think that's because deep down, like, he kind of knows she's right. He kind of knows that he's gone too far, but he doesn't want to admit that, so he just instead kicks her out of his life, just like he did with Fredo for a while. And I thought that was really interesting. Details like that just make Michael's character so fascinating. He's never like, he's cold and hurtless, but he's never straight up maniacal. Like, there's parts to his character, there's layers to his character that are just interesting to peel away.
And it's
It's
interesting
like
because
onions.
the mafia won't, like, yeah.
Okay, Shrek, what is with you and onions
Yeah.
today?
Boo.
And like the mafia, they won't. They kind of like they keep to themselves. Like they won't hurt, like go after anybody who they don't have to. Like you have to actually do something to them, or like get
Mhm.
involved in their family or their business for them to actually consider going after you. So like I guess like you can see like a bit of reasonable qualities, but it's not quite enough to actually think, oh yeah, the mafia, like they're okay, like they're
Oh,
okay people.
No, I didn't look at it that way, but
No.
Michael
What
has
a bunch
done
of stand-up good fellas.
that.
Yeah.
A bunch of
Real,
good fellas.
real upright citizens.
But
we,
yeah,
we kill, but it's in. We have money. We're fine.
yeah,
We're
that, that's one thing I love about the
we-
sequel, though. It strips that
We
way
kill
entirely.
for money. It's what this great country is built on.
Exactly, and there's great
Going on-
line.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Sorry, Matt, go on.
Going what I wanted to say about the first movie, again, what Julia said, it kind of glamorizes the mafia, and it kind of like Hollywoodizes it in a sense, and that's one of the reasons I like The Godfather, because you can kind of look at it like in its own little universe, like it's Hollywood's interpretation of the mafia universe in this whole sense. It kind of, you can kind of gloss over some of the things like, wait, fuck, that doesn't make any sense, as you can kind of gloss over on those facts, and like, it's a movie, it's not real, that kind of thing. So
It's like frat boy escapism.
exactly.
A little bit, yeah.
Those guys,
Which is
wanna
what
think
I
of
was
the things
criticizing
when
it on
when
initially.
when they pile on
Mhm.
$6 of that cologne that you can buy in the bathroom and stick their hair down with 15 pounds of gel. Go, hey,
Oh, yeah.
hey, how
Hey.
you doing? Hey, finger
Hey.
guns, hey.
Hey, gabagool.
Gabagool.
yeah.
Gabagool,
Big
you!
And they wear some like thrift store leather jacket.
with a thin gold chain.
That's how they save
Yeah.
money in the Matrix.
Well, the good thing about that is you can always smell them before they come in the room. So
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
But in comparison, part 2 is so much more bleak and honest to me, and that's part of why I find it more engaging. Like, this is probably what families are actually like, just crazy, paranoid, greedy. Even Connie is very greedy at first. Like, he only goes to Michael to ask for more money, and it's only when a tragedy happens towards the end of the story that she has to step in and take care of him. But
Yeah.
beforehand, she was just like, part of her was angry for what happened to her last husband, but on the other hand, she did kind of like the greed and fame get to him. Fredo did to an extent with like all of his, I want to say bitches, but all of his girls and all of the ways he tries to manipulate people, just like Michael tells him to. It's like, oh, just put on a good show. It's like, oh, Mike, that's my specialty. You know, like, everybody's consumed by this life one way or another. It's more interesting. I think one of the first lines from the get-go, you shared an image of it, Devin, when he's speaking to the sender, and he says, we're both part of the same hypocrisy. Like, this is a very, we know from the get-go, this is a very different interpretation of the Godfather, but it also says, like, the government's no different than the slimeball criminals that try to exploit their society.
That was such a good line. I love that. We're both part of the same hypocrisy, but don't
perfect.
rope my family into this, or don't mistake my family as being a part of it, or something like
It's
that.
like, all right, we have to play little games. Play
Mhm.
yours. And aims the cannon at him.
I think I think he intentionally mispronounces his name at first too. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but
Oh,
Carl.
he's
Nah.
racist. Yeah, he's straight up racist. It's
Oh,
like,
he's
I don't like your
totally
kind of
racist.
people. And then later on, he has to be like, I love the Italian people. They're these great, awesome people that come to this country, but we just know it's a load of bullshit. We only know it's
Yeah,
like
that
that
was one
because
big
Michael has him
season
by
on
the
that.
throat at that point.
Pretty much.
Yeah, both part of the same hypocrisy. He
Yep.
puts himself as a decent American just like how Michael puts himself as a decent American. It's all just a facade. And that's kind of what they're trying to explore.
I also really like this one crossfade shot where you see Michael and you see Vito, and they kind of crossfade and dissolve one to the other, and their frame kind of almost looking at each other, or at least on like opposite sides. I thought that was really cool. I love.
Yeah, this is when we see Fredo when he has the pneumonia, right?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
because
that was a very good transition.
I think he was having a conversation with his mother, which is the first time I think we actually see her. I don't remember seeing her in the first movie.
She's in the first
was
movie at the
there. We see her
wedding,
at the
but
wedding.
that's about it.
Yeah.
Oh, at
she's,
the wedding, but then
Yeah.
okay.
She's around.
Yeah,
I
she hangs
figured
up.
she must have been, but I just missed her. Like,
But
I
she has
hear
time
them
to shine
talk,
in this movie.
which was something I kind of read into. It was like they talk about their mother and not wanting to worry their mother, but you never see her. Like she's not really involved in what they're doing. And a lot of the women kind of get sidelined outside of the business. Like, and it's the last shot of The Godfather is where they're shutting the door on Diane Keaton and trying to keep her out of all the bullshit they're up to.
And we didn't really.
They'll get most Italian mothers will get or Italian ladies will get pushed off to the side like that. It's actually really, really, really bad.
And there's the flashback with Sonny at the end where Carlo's like, "Hey, Sonny, we don't need to talk about the war. Hey, hey, Connie, talk to Carlo, right?" He just immediately blows her off, like she's not even important to him, and that kind of adds some context to the first movie because it's like part of why Sonny wanted to beat up Carlo was because he treated his sister like shit and gave her a really bad husband, and he knew it. Like it makes the first film better, which is something great fan sequels can do.
Film.
Yeah.
It was also very telling, I think, when Michael first got the news that his wife miscarried. His first question was, "What is it, a boy?" Not, "Is she okay?"
Yeah, exactly. Like all that matters to him is.
You'd hope most people's first question, if their wife had a miscarriage, supposedly, like that's a traumatic thing. Is she okay? Not in his concern at all.
Yeah, and compare that to how Don spoke to Robert Duvall's character in the first movie. Like when he was told that Sonny died, he put his own emotions aside to comfort him in his moment of need. Like he knows he's in a desperate situation. But here, Michael just asks if it's a boy, and he flips out of it. It's like, "Dad, can't you give me a straight answer anymore? Was it a boy?" Like he doesn't care about his emotions at all. And it's such a stark contrast to something his father did right. Like he doesn't understand how to connect his family together. Like he's in way over his head. Details like that, and comparisons like that, I just love.
It's like oh wait, that's Al Pacino. There he is.
Yeah, there's and my my six.
Just that general.
Well, my children can play with the toys, but that works with the coldness angles so well because you just know he could snap at any moment, and you're just cautiously awaiting the moments he does. and because he's selective about his freakouts and isn't doing it like every 5 minutes, it's so much more effective. Like it's really terrifying. There's parts where I was looking away because I was just so uncomfortable with his presence in this movie. And we need to talk about the music. We kind of skipped over in the first movie, so let's address it here a little bit. In the opening scene, we hear the Godfather theme, but there's something wrong with it. There's something distorted about it. There's something more tragic to it. I think that's to symbolize that, the family has kind of lost their edge, that they're beginning to fall apart at this part of the story. This isn't like the first story at all. It's setting this dark and somber atmosphere through the music alone. Like, this isn't the first movie anymore. I usually hate stuff like that, where it's like, oh, this ain't your grandfather's Godfather movie, but here I think it was very purposeful and effective. There's lots of great
Doesn't
use of
Kansas
dresses like that.
anymore.
I
Yeah.
never noticed that.
And the Godfather Waltz, they always play that song every time there's business being done. Notice how it plays when Michael's talking to Kay when he comes back from Italy in the first movie. You know, perhaps that was like a business deal and not like reconnecting with his wife and his family.
Ooh.
Every time business being conducted, that theme plays. Or the darker kind of tone plays as well. I forget what the song is at the climax, but it plays a few times, so it's like dun dun bum, bum. Like we just know something horrible is gonna happen. It's not just business is being done, but I kind of take that as the wrong business is being done.
It's like
it's
an
taking
uneasy
a toll.
feeling.
Yeah, like it takes a
Yeah.
toll on the characters involved, and yeah, it's so much. It's not like the Godfather Waltz where it's like, okay, it's plain about business being done, but it's kind of lighthearted and fun. And leave the gun, take the cannoli. It's kind of funny and lighthearted, but it's just very dark and very somber. And like you said,
Yeah.
it just leaves you feeling sick on the inside.
It's like
Very-
something bad's gonna happen, but I don't know what.
Yeah, exactly. Just let it happen already, please.
It's like,
just
when is
sets
it
the
gonna
mood.
come?
Exactly.
Get it over with.
Fantastic use of music in both films. The
Yeah,
only
absolutely.
issue I had with this is that once again there is some bad ADR, but nothing quite like I talked about Zini, but a few times where characters are in shadows or in cars and their mouths aren't moving, and they have to use ADR, or when Clements and Vito are in public. Yeah, a couple times like that, but it wasn't a major issue, especially in the flashbacks because it was all different language anyways. And I wanted to ask Julia, Robert De Niro learned this language from scratch. How did he do?
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
Robert De Niro
Uh,
learned this language from scratch. He did not know any Sicilian or any Italian before doing this movie. He spent 4 months learning the language before
I had
being
no
in it.
idea. I thought he just knew.
Nope.
No, he didn't.
Oh my
did not.
goodness. Okay, well, that's an immediate 10 out of 10 on my end, because like,
Yeah.
as
I know.
Sicilian is very slangy. Sicilians kind of have like their own. They don't call themselves Italians. They call themselves Sicilians.
Right.
So
Very suave about it.
yeah,
Mm,
like they're very proud, and like that. With that being said, like it's very slangy, which
exaggerated.
can make it hard to learn.
Mhm.
And the fact that he learned that in 4 months, that's fucking incredible. Excuse
It's
my language.
insane. I think he was just reading a book like front to back and just practicing with other actors constantly. Like the
What
amount of
really,
yeah.
what I really liked was when like he would be speaking Italian, and then there was this one scene where he's like speaking, and then he's like, "Don't worry, I make an offer he can't refuse," and I'm like, there
Just-
it is.
There's the line.
Ah,
He said the thing.
Said the
Hey.
thing.
Said the
There
thing.
it is.
Ding ding ding.
And like the amount
There's
of
the-
preparation Robert did for these roles back in the 70s, like Taxi Driver, he spent like months like driving around in taxis, dealing with crazy people in New York, walking the streets. Like he sold his car and just walked to the set every day for a while. Like he put in a crazy amount of devotion to his roles back in the day.
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah. I really don't have. I don't know. Do you guys have any issues with it? Because besides some ADR, I really don't have any issues with it.
I
No, I
can't say
couldn't
right
find
now.
anything.
No.
What about you, Devin?
Not off the bat. I mean, I just find so many things fascinating in it. Although a lot of it I couldn't remember. Like
There's a lot
upon
to remember.
revisiting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot that goes on, and it's amazing like how well of a sequel it holds up as. It just feels like a cohesive continuation of the first story that improves on what was laid before. Um, and yeah, it's really hard to kind of nitpick. I'm just trying to learn more about it. Like as we're talking, I'm just reading some trivia. But you already covered the fact that De Niro actually lived in Sicily for 3 whole months while studying the language and
3 months.
preparing
Okay.
for his role. So he really committed to um, learning these roles for these films, and that kind of commitment you don't see too much anymore.
No.
Unless except for like certain actors. But
Mhm.
it just blows my mind how much dedication and work they put into making these films to make them feel as authentic and lived in as possible. Um, And yeah, and they hold up for decades on end because of that.
Yeah.
Can I just say something real quick?
Please.
Yes.
Okay, so there's this movie with Robert De Niro, and what's his name? Ben Stiller. I just want to say it's called Meet the Parents.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Robert De Niro plays an old white guy. Just an old white, and
Isn't
I'm like,
that
I can't
every
look, I
Robert De
can't
Niro
look at you the
performance now?
same way. I see you as Don Vito Corleone. I don't see you as Robert, who lives in the suburbs. I'm like, I can't. I'm sorry, no, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, you're the Sicilian man. What happened
You're
to
a
that?
Sicilian. You're not Robert from the suburbs.
I haven't seen it, but apparently he's even worse than Bad Grandpa.
Oh God.
Oh yeah. I
Or
haven't seen that, but I heard about that. Yeah.
have you seen The Irishman? Because he speaks some
No.
Italian in that.
Yes.
I heard it's good though.
Yeah, it is pretty good.
Fantastic one.
It's
That
pretty
movie
good.
also reinvigorated my love for the chili dog.
Oh God, yeah. It's Martin Scorsese. Every food scene he has is delicious. And speaking of food scenes, the spaghetti and meatballs in this movie,
Spaghetti bolognese.
I
oh
get
my goodness.
hungry every time I see it. And Clemenza's just digging in, and I'm like, I wish that was me.
And just like his brother, and just like the brothers say, you take your bread and you mop up the sauce after you finish eating, because that's
know what
the
that's
best
called?
part. I don't know what it's called traditionally, but
Lay it
please
on me.
admit-
Scarpetta.
Scarpetta. I
Scarpetta?
like that.
Yes.
That's a nice
Very
ring
nice.
to
It's
it.
the best way because you get to taste the sauce, you get the fresh bread.
Yep.
You throw a little olive oil and parmesan on top of that.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And you just grill it. Fantastic. Ratings.
One interesting
even-
fact I just read
Yeah.
that Francis Ford Coppola wasn't originally didn't want to direct the second one because he had
Nope.
such an awful time directing the first one.
With the
Which is-
mafia and everything.
Oh, and the studio
I know.
too. In fairness.
Well, yeah, but which makes sense. But he had like Martin Scorsese in mind to do the second one, which would have been really interesting and fitting. I mean, who else would you pick to do that? But
Yeah.
I think this is the third film. We'll get to the third film, but I think Martin Scorsese's mother shows up at some point.
Yep.
She always ends up in a film with his one way or
Mhm.
another. I don't know if has anyone seen the documentary Italian American?
I have not.
No.
No.
It's basically just Martin Scorsese interviewing his parents, and it's great. I recommend it.
I gotta see it because I love his mom so much. Like I loved her in Goodfellas. Spielberg said she
Oh, yeah.
should have won a performance for that, and I 100% agree. Final ratings for part 2. 9.5
Can
out
I
of
give
10.
it- I was gonna say, can I give it anything other than 10? I
Uh,
don't know.
Do you want to go higher?
Is it mathematically possible?
You did it for Eyes Wide Shut, so sure.
Right. Very, very, very telling. I gave it to that movie. I'll give this an 11.
Nice. Yeah, it's so close to a 10. It's so close. Just a couple nitpicks take it away. But I only have like 6 movies I'd consider 10 out of 10 in fairness. But what about you, Julie and Matt?
Oh, Matt, you go first.
In the words of the Italians, Cindane. I'd say this is a near perfect movie. I'd give it a 100 if I could, but I will give it just a 10. 10. It's one of the best movies out there, hands down. It's one of, if not my favorite, gangster movie that I have seen.
Me too.
I'd say 9.5 out of 10.
Awesome.
I did feel a bit confused watching it at first. But everything wrapped up nicely overall, and
That's fair. There's a lot that happens too. There's so
I
many
was very
characters.
pleased.
Yeah, I get it.
It's bookended by some emotional moments that really hit home and resonate. So
It
Yeah.
drives
think-
it all home.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Awesome. I guess I'll introduce part 3, unless you want to introduce it, Devin.
oh, I know you've been no, Ian, you've been dying to talk about this one all night.
I'll give it. I'll give
Shut
it a
up
fair
about it.
shake.
Poncho's
I just
ready.
recently
Here
watched it
comes.
too.
Yeah.
How can I stop you? I can't stop you. Don't do it.
I just
It's
watched it today
coming.
in fairness, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. Godfather
Oh,
Part
okay.
3 was made 16 years after the second Godfather, and it's about the epic conclusion to Michael, who's kind of dealing with the trauma of losing Fredo, and has to put up with this new crime family that Andy Garcia just really wants to whack and doesn't get along with. So he's dealing with all of that drama, but he's also dealing with reuniting with Kay and getting everybody to forgive him for every nasty little action he's done in the past 2 films. And that's, yeah, essentially the story. there's other elements too, like a creepy incest subplot and
Oh my god.
lots
I
of
know.
Oh yeah.
politics with the church, and we'll get into that in a bit. But I'm gonna be honest, I didn't hate this movie as much as a lot of other people did, but I still don't think it's great. There's a lot about it that's kind of bad, and
Yeah.
I feel like if certain stuff was cut out and certain things were elaborated on, could have been a lot better. But as it stands, it's kind of a mediocre mess of a movie. But there were some things I appreciated about it. I didn't hate watching it, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
I was pretty good with most of it, except why were the cousins fucking again?
And
I
why
think
was
Again, yeah,
I
that's
don't
the
know.
first thing. That's the first
Yeah.
thing I have in my notes here.
Please?
Why is there so much cousin fucking?
Why are they fucking?
Why is
Why are the
Francis
cousins
Ford
fucking
Coppola's
in the
daughter
kitchen?
casted in an incest plot?
Why
What
is their
the
cousin
fuck?
fucking in the kitchen? Like,
because when Noah Ryder
no.
said no.
Yeah, she
Just
said no
say-
to being Edward Scissorhands, and he said instead of casting an actually talented actress, I'll just cast my daughter, because that's not nepotism at all.
Oh, she doesn't
Yeah, I feel
totally
like that
talk
was like big
monotone
nepotism
either.
and like
Crap,
I respect
she's
Sofia
bad.
Coppola as a film creator.
Maker.
I
Oh,
think,
she's
I
a
think
great
she's
director.
a filmmaker. Yes, thank you. I think she's great, but this was definitely like Francis being like, yeah, well, let me put my daughter in it because like
I need to get her name
she'll
out
just be
there.
pretty in there.
Yeah.
You know, we've had a thing where we've talked about directors who seem to cuckold their wives in movie roles where
yeah.
they have them sleeping with another guy. This is the only time I've seen like with a daughter. It's really weird when you put it that
And an incest
that
plot.
way.
And they keep
I'm
reaffirming
sorry.
that they're cousins. Yeah, there's a line where she's
I'm
like,
bad.
he's like, she's your first cousin, and he's like, then I love him first.
It's weird.
Oh,
It's
God.
like they're kissing. Hey, cuz. Hey, cuz. Oh, cuz. They're like, no.
Please stop.
No.
God damn it.
I
And
gotta
this
say,
is
like
not-
the scene where they started kissing was weird too. It
Oh
was
my
just like it was
God.
they had
awkward.
no
I'm like,
chemistry.
if I was in the room with him, I'd be like, oh my god.
It's
Take it
there's
somewhere
like the
else.
close-ups
Gnocchi,
of
what are
them
you
fingering the
doing?
dough. There's the close-ups of them fingering the dough. Not very subtle at all.
Oh, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. No,
Yeah,
no,
and-
don't
and-
show
and-
me
and-
that.
Exactly. I
Don't
love you
put it
guys.
on the
I love
chat.
you
The first one.
cuz. No,
And
you don't say that unless there's cheesy porn music kicking in.
I was honestly expecting that. I was honestly expecting like a trumpet, like the love theme from Chinatown to kick in or something. Like it was.
oh, God.
And I
And-
could
and-
maybe forgive it if it was like interestingly written or compelling, but it's so cheesy and melodramatic, and it's only really
Yeah.
there because, well, we need a tragic love story in our epic conclusion, I guess.
Al-
It wasn't
also
even tragic.
also
it was
he-
just like, ugh.
he very early casually admits that he like had 8-year-old girlfriends when he was 15 or something, and this seems to turn her on. I don't know.
That's
Well,
creepy.
Yeah, when you-
I agree. It's like the first time they meet. It's like the first time they meet up, and she says, "Hey, do you remember me?" And like, and like I was 8, and like, oh, I had a lot of girlfriends when I was 15, and she's like 8-year-olds. He says, especially 8-year-olds. I'm like, what the fuck did he just casually mention?
why did she bring up 8-year-olds? Why was she just like, oh, 8-year-olds? That's hot. That's really hot. I was like, no,
I'm into
stop.
that.
Yeah, I'm into that.
8-year-old dude.
Yeah, also her acting. Holy
Very
shit.
stone
She's
faced.
so monotone. Oh my
Dad.
god.
When she
Dad,
dies
I
at the
love
end,
you.
she's
I
like,
wanna take care of
Dad?
Dad, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Hey,
Yeah, in every
that
scene.
redeemed
Just
the whole
a little bit
the-
of
the-
effort.
Sorry.
her dying kind of redeemed the whole character arc for me, which doesn't sound good to say, but that was a genuinely shocking moment. Like, I don't want to
Yes, definitely.
spoil the ending, but the fact that she was shot and was relatively innocent compared to everything else, you know, that
True.
that was a heartbreaking moment in the context of the whole
And
thing.
you see the anguish on Michael's face.
Yes,
He's, like,
Oh,
screaming
yeah.
and screaming and
He
Yeah.
can't muster up the energy to cry out in pain. It takes him a full second, and it's just you're just sitting there. It's like you almost feel the pain, but at the same time you realize like this is exactly the pain that he has caused so many of these people.
Yeah. How'd you
Yeah.
guys feel about the
It's
ending?
almost-
I'm
it's
curious.
I think it saved whatever problems you might have of the movie. I think it does. I don't know. it feels like everything kind of comes full circle. Like Matt was just saying, that he's finally experiencing the pain that he's caused others in such a deep and profound way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see. It's a great scene on paper. Like on paper, I love the scene, but the way it was executed felt so cheesy to me. Like everyone
Yeah.
just screaming
Yes.
over the top music. And compare that to look how they massacred my boy, and just the subtle, like he's trying not to cry, and that one scene was so much more effective than any of the emotional beats in this
Plus,
movie. But they really
They
try.
didn't even show Sonny's body. They didn't even show any of the
They showed his
they
body a little
briefly
bit, but it was like only
briefly
his head.
showed it over, but they didn't
Yeah.
give it like the full dun dun close up on his body like you would see in nowadays.
Yeah, and they weren't screaming over
Yeah.
melodramatic music. No, God, please, no! And
Look
on paper, it's a great scene,
bye.
but the way it was
Exactly.
executed just kind of ruined it for me, unfortunately. Al
Had to
Pacino
Yeah.
does a
be
good
really
job,
fast.
but it's just reduced
He
to
goes
screaming.
full Pacino at the end of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Walter Murphy,
Like,
I'll give him
oh,
credit,
it's
the
like,
editor
I'm-
of this movie. The way he describes it makes it sound much better than the scene actually is. So it's like the silent scream. The music comes to a halt as we can't hear his screams into the darkness. I'm like, Walter, you're making the scene sound better than it is.
See, I would have preferred it if they just cut it at like they didn't have him scream. They just had the music there, and then it would cut to him sitting in the chair and
Yeah.
and some of that would have been better in my opinion, rather than him going ah. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like
Well,
it's like you.
It
It's like
cuts from the
it's time
screen.
where you're
Yeah.
sitting in the movie theater, and there's the big emotional scene, and then there's the one person just bawling in the back of the theater. It's like you couldn't hold it in for 30 more seconds. Like, come on.
Yeah, come on, man. And that's an interesting point because the whole movie I was just like, okay, there's certain parts that work and certain parts that doesn't. And it was just in my brain, I was trying to restructure this film in a way that worked. You know, like I said it wasn't as bad as it was, and there were some compelling plot lines. Like I thought the stuff with Michael and Kay in particular was like the highlights of the movie for me. They both do a great job, and I actually bought their relationship a little bit compared to the incest. And
Yeah.
you know, there's elements of like the kids having different views on what Michael did. Like Connie just, you know, genuinely believes that he wasn't responsible, and his son believes that he was, and creates some tension. That was interesting. If that was fleshed out, that could have been a great emotional beat. But instead, we get church politics and incest and a stupid fucking helicopter scene that felt
That
like
was so
something out of a
dumb. Oh
Die
my
Hard
gosh.
movie. Let's talk about that. What
was
the
expecting
fuck?
Arnold Schwarzenegger to jump down.
Yeah, it sounds like a level of GoldenEye. There's a guy who's like, "This is my lucky coat. This is
my
my
lucky coat. I can't leave
It's
my
not
lucky
supposed
coat.
to be
It's like
funny."
I
And he
couldn't
gets
take
shot,
it seriously
and I'm like,
at
you
that point.
fucking
I
idiot.
couldn't take it seriously.
Yeah,
at
you
that
could have
point.
just walked out, but you know. And I wanted to ask you guys, like, what do you guys think would improve this movie? Because my thing is that they just restructured it and took certain scenes out and elaborated on others. Might have been better, but I'm curious to see what you guys think.
Well, I feel for starters, I don't think they should have involved, or you know what, involve Michael's daughter. Her name was Mary, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but like
Hail
not
Mary.
yes, but like not involve her as much as they did. Like, don't have her go into an incestuous relationship with her first cousin.
Yeah, just
And,
take
like,
that out.
Don't have her do the same stone face expression of her lip twitching every
Staring into the
scenes.
camera. Like, you're clearly
I'm-
not
I'm
supposed
like,
to do that.
You know what? She's not really doing anything of substance for the plot. Like, she's just kind of been like, oh,
Oh, Daddy.
oh, Dad,
Oh,
you know, why are we
baby.
doing this? Like, God, like,
Shut up.
I'm like, Mary, God, stop it.
Get your shit together.
Get a spray bottle
Like,
out.
you're screwing your cousin. You're gonna have very ugly babies. I'm just saying.
If they have any babies at all, they're gonna come out.
We'll just take him to an institution or whatever.
Oh God.
He's
Matt-
never
For the most
responded.
part,
You
I
need
thought
to
it was,
stop this right now. And he's like, the fact that he took a second is like, yeah, I gotta think about this for a second. No, you don't have to think about it for a second.
Just
It
say
is
no.
wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
It's unholy. Just all the classes style robbed of it. But sorry, you were saying, Julia.
No, it's okay. I think for the most part, it was a bit of a weird movie. Like, I was watching it, and I'm just like, oh, this is like a weird fever dream.
Yeah. Honestly.
Like, it's like a weird fever dream, but I thought it was, for the most part, I liked it. Definitely not as striking as as its predecessors. But
It also wasn't as bad as I was led to believe. I
no,
mean, I
but
guess
like,
I agree.
yeah,
we talked about the Matrix films last week, and there's quite um a difference in quality, I'll say, between those films. So I think I was prepared for that much level of tonal dissonance, where this wasn't. It's just like there are some interesting things that they're kind of trying to parallel with Vincent kind of rising to power and Michael
Mhm.
Yeah.
trying to be the better person after all these years, but it's kind of this inevitable vicious cycle continuing. And I do think that that was really interesting. And also the one scene where he does kind of confess to killing his brother to the priest, I did think was genuinely really like emotional. Like I actually did
That was
welt
a
up
good scene.
almost a little bit there. Like
even
it
the
was a
priest
good
was
scene.
scared when he saw it. He's like, oh my god.
Yeah, the
And
priest
and, and,
deserves
and the
an Oscar.
priest and the priest straight up tells him, you're a terrible man and you deserve to suffer. But
I'm going to absolve you because that's my job. He's like, wow, that's admirable.
and I
Yeah.
love the way that they shot the scene with all the flowers
It's-
kind of around them.
This movie
It
is
was pretty.
beautiful. Like even
Even
though
It
it
is.
didn't have the
behind his
contrasty
face.
lighting, like the lighting kind of sucked in this movie compared to the first two, the framing of the shots was still very well done, and the editing.
It
This
felt
is yeah.
very it felt very soft and naturalistic, kind of like he's
Yeah.
not living in this hard-edged world anymore, as hard-edged as
Just
it
trying to
was,
see
and
the beauty of it.
he's grown up and he's softened over the years in a
Yeah.
good way. And I do think that the lighting reflects that, but in a way that doesn't feel so tonally adjacent to like the first films. Like you can tell it's the same world that he's in, but he doesn't have it as hard an edge as he used to, and I think that's very
fair.
reflective in the look of it. Like I do think
Yeah.
it's a beautiful film, and it was a lot better than I was led to believe. But there
Mm.
are there are some questionable things in it for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Very.
yeah,
Vincent.
yeah, very Vincent. But I
Yeah.
thought like the hit scenes. Yeah, you said like the cinematography is great. Hey, another movie where editor Walter Murph, like the English Patient, kind of carries the movie and saves it in a way. The hit
Yeah.
scenes were very disappointing. I thought, yeah, the KKK hit scene, yeah, that was so goofy. Like the scene where it's like, ah, I got you here, but it was me and the police horse all along.
It was me,
It's like,
Dio.
Joey.
yeah, like there was never
Bang,
anything that
bang,
Oh, that's
stupid in the first two
It's like,
movies.
okay.
Well, this was something I was wondering about, and I was asking Julie if she knew anything about this, like these robe fellows, because I figured there's got to be some thing that isn't KKK. Like I imagine this is some traditional robe thing
Yes,
from.
it is.
And I guess there are like different like brotherhoods that wear in this kind of garb. The KKK has just become the most famous one for very unfortunate reasons. Um,
Well,
yeah.
I'm just gonna say, Southern Italy compared to like the North, like especially Sicily, they have to this day they hold on to some very archaic, really almost like cult-like traditions, uh, that are part of Catholicism, that
Mhm.
aren't like viewed in the North, because like the South is like almost a little, it's a bit more rural than the North. Actually, it's very rural. So like they like that's one of the things that, like those old archaic like Semana Santa robes. Nobody really, I'm not surprised that nobody really understands it because it's such an old tradition. And it's from Spain. Like I think Mike said at one point, like I don't understand why they would have a Spanish tradition portrayed in an Italian opera. But yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. It's kind
That's
of
good
like
to
how,
know because.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, it's kind of like how the Nazis appropriated the swastika and how the
Yeah.
swastika was originally a Buddhist thing. They stole the Othala from the Norse and other things like that. It's just kind of things that has been appropriated and unfortunately has become more popular due to its cultural insignificance than cultural significance, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Wanted to ask you guys about the direction they take with Michael in this movie, because that was a huge point of contention with a lot of people. Al Pacino himself even had major problems with the decisions they made with the character, and basically got to the point where he begged for Francis Ford Coppola to do rewrites, and he basically said, no, just go along with it. It's like, okay, great. So, how do you guys feel about the direction they take the character? There's elements of it I like, and elements of it I really, really don't like, but I'll get into that in a sec. I'll let you guys take the floor first.
Mike, you can go ahead.
I felt like they're trying to draw far too many similarities to his character in the second movie, how he's both being even more secluded, but at the same time he's even more wanting to be to have remuneration and be absolved of his sins. It's like it's he's doing it again, but he's doing it harder, but he's not becoming in any different sense. I feel like the whole diabetes thing and his whole illness thing was very, very keyed in. Like they should have incorporated that a little bit better into the first or the second movie, or at least
Feels very
incorporated-
exaggerated.
Yeah, it was very exaggerated, like him, like.
Yeah, I'm like,
I thought he was having a heart
I thought he had a
attack
heart
every
attack,
Me
not a
too.
stroke.
Yeah,
What
it
was
was a
that?
diabetic stroke. It was a diabetic stroke.
appar-
So it kind of was.
Yeah,
a heart attack.
apparently
What?
he was very deliberately channeling Shakespeare there, which seems like not a weird choice. Like
Why
he,
would you do
well,
that?
well,
Again,
it's like
it's-
he's talking about thunder, harmless noise.
Yeah, and Fredo,
So
it's
goofy.
it's like
You deceitful old fuck.
exactly. It's like, is this? It felt so unnatural. Like it felt like so unnecessary.
Felt like they pulled it off their ass.
Exactly.
I
But
feel like
it's
they might have also
you
been
should've
channeling. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, you should have just let Al Pacino do his thing. Like like he's known this character. He's played this character before. He knows how to play
Yeah.
this character. With all due respect, Mr. Coppola should have just been like, "Hey, I need some. You want to do rewrites? Come here with me and let's do this together."
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's just like they tried, but they tried too hard and
Yeah.
they missed the mark.
They did not get so far.
Yes. And in the end, it didn't even matter.
Yeah, God.
Doo-doo!
Get-
so hot.
We'll get there in a sec. Yeah. Julia, what about you?
Oh, sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to interrupt you at first. But I just want to say, oh, what was I gonna say? Oh, yes. Okay, so I feel like they were also kind of like channeling a parallel, like when Vito got shot, he was in the hospital. Michael had his stroke, then was in the hospital,
Yeah.
and we see them at kind of like a weak and feeble point in their life. I
Yes.
think they were trying to channel that, but they could have done a better job.
Yeah, I
That's-
think
that's
what
all.
makes it effective with Vito is we don't spend the whole time with him. So we're just constantly wondering what's going to happen with him. Is he
Exactly.
okay? Is he going to be alright? But here it's like, okay, we're just from Michael's perspective, it's just kind of boring. Nothing's really
And
happening.
Kay just has to say,
Don't just slow us right
"Oh,
down.
Michael, this is the first time I've ever seen you this hopeless." It's like, okay,
Oh,
we
God.
get it.
There's
We're
some
supposed
bad
to understand
lines, yeah.
this.
There-
Great job.
That and the whole, they will fear you now. Some really not great lines of dialogue.
Yeah, it's a very cookie cutter voice
I
lines in this one.
would have liked this arc a lot better if there was like an arc to it. Like, I don't buy that Michael in the second movie would immediately be like this. And I get what you're saying, like he's older and wiser and he's trying to be a better person. I feel like if I had like an arc leading up to that point, I'd like it better. Like maybe if he started out miserable and cold and I don't know, he was shown like a better path where he was dealing with the torment and of what happened to Fredo over the course of the movie, and maybe it ended this way. I think it would work better. It would be cheesy, but I think I would buy that character more. But the fact that right away he's just virtual signaling and giving tons of money away to priests as way to virtual signals, I don't buy it. Like it's too
Yeah.
soon. I feel like if there was like an arc to that point, it would have been so much more effective. And again, that's part of how I was trying to restructure it. Like, have that arc so that it actually be a character arc instead of just he feels bad for the whole movie. Take out the incest plot, take out some of the dumb action scenes, and really hone in on the family drama, the parts that are
Absolutely.
actually compelling. Because there is stuff there, like the stuff with Kay,
Yeah.
while he's talking to her in Italy. and she's tearing up. Like, I actually welted up a bit at that scene. That was
That was
incredibly
a beautiful
effective.
scene.
Like, it came
Yeah,
from
I
the
was just
heart.
I was just about to ask you about like what did everyone think of Diane Keaton's kind of reintroduction of Kay? Because I do think that her
She
coming
did an
back
amazing
and
job.
I think
Yeah,
so. I
she's
think
the
she
best
added a
actress
lot
in the
of
movie.
emotional sincerity to it, calling him out on his bullshit and him begrudgingly accepting it after all these years. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I know. What else is he gonna do at this point? He kind of agrees with what she's saying,
Exactly.
and she doesn't really say she forgives him. It's just I loved
And
you, and they don't get
and
back together, which I liked.
and he's you know, they're in their home in Sicily, and he says, I used to look out this window and think about you, and he says, oh, and you got married again.
Yeah, they finally
Or
addressed that plot line. I was happy about that.
Yep.
Like, finally, a movie addresses that happened. It wasn't just some crazy fever dream I concocted on my own. But, we mentioned favorite sequence, and for the last two movies, what's your favorite sequence here? Because I like that scene in particular, but I also love the opening scene with the shots of, like, the house, but it's all wilted and old and abandoned and darkly lit. At first, I was really excited, like, wow, this will be a darker movie than people led me to believe. And there's that awful letter monologue. I'm like, oh. And that conflict of things I love and things I hated just began. But that sequence of shots up until that point was beautiful. But what about you guys?
I mean, I really like just the cinematography towards the end. This one shot in particular when they're throwing the priest down the stairs. I don't know why. It was a cool shot.
Yeah, and also the
Yeah.
guy hanging in the darkness. That was fantastic.
Ooh,
It's
that
probably
was
the best
good.
shot in the movie.
Oh, I got that one too. I screen capped all of these because they were just
Yeah,
so
they
fucking
st-
good.
yeah. The cinematographer
Look
and
at that.
editing tried to carry this movie. I give him credit for
And
that.
Yeah. I feel like the scene, like the climax, where like
Dude.
uh, dude, what's his name? What's his son's name?
Oh, Anthony
Yeah, Anthony. Like he's
singing on stage.
he's performing, he's singing, he's doing his thing, and because there was a parallel. Like there's always like a parallel in these movies where there's something nice and happy going on, and everyone's enjoying themselves, and then behind the scenes, behind that, people are getting killed and nuffed.
Oh,
You
with
know,
the
so like
assassin.
Like the
yeah,
baptism
like
murders.
Michael's enjoying the show. He's proud of his son, and meanwhile,
There's a microscope. pointing
Connie
at him,
watches
right?
her godfather eat a poison cannoli and claps in his chair. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
And doesn't tell
oh,
anyone.
Cannolis,
For
man.
some
That's
reason.
gotta
sad.
suck. That's gotta
I
suck.
Not
mean,
the cannoli.
And he stabs someone with glasses. Yeah, thank you for that. That was the scene that happened. Stab someone with glasses. I'm sorry,
I
Julia.
didn't
We had
think that was what happened at first. I thought he broke the glasses and then stabbed him with the
killed
glass.
the man with a
But like,
fucking
no,
pencil.
he full on just fucking puts the glasses through his throat. I'm like, who is this guy? The Terminator?
And then there's the
Right.
fucking pretend strangle. Like, the guy was pretending to be strangled and did the surprise
yeah.
stab. What the fuck was that?
Like,
I'm
that was
sorry,
weird.
Julia.
That was weird. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go,
The-
go
the-
on. I had to
the-
bring it up.
okay.
the face he makes too looks like something out of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like the bulging
It's
eyes.
so goofy. Ooh. And oh yeah, there's the guy with the donkey sound effect. What was that? Was that supposed to be funny? Like the guy doing the donkey
I
impression?
thought it was weird.
Yeah. So many
Apparently,
goofy
it was
elements
something
like
that
that.
he used to do when he was younger, but like, ugh.
Yeah, I know he can't do it anymore. That's for sure.
Not really. Doesn't sound like a donkey, that's for sure. But favorite scene, I'd probably have to say, would be Mary's death at the end, minus the final Al Pacino scream. Like I stand what I said before.
It's a well
If-
shot scene.
The shot scene, if you cut it right at the end, as he's about to scream, like it fades back into the scene of him sitting in Sicily all those years later. I think that would like almost perfect the scene. Other than that, everything was just a little too cheesy
Mhm.
or too
Mm.
incesty or just like trying
Pointless.
too hard or pointless, and it's just like, okay, we get it. Yeah, okay, yeah. There's the similarity. We can all see it. You don't have to point it out that fucking hard. Okay, it's
Yeah, no.
right there.
Trust their intelligence. You know.
Exactly. It's like the director is like, look at this reference, look at this reference,
Look, he
and
killed
another
Alfredo.
one.
He killed Alfredo,
Yeah.
and then we have characters bring up that he killed Fredo. It's like, you already showed us that he killed Fredo. Why do you
Yeah,
need
remember
characters to bring up
this?
Fredo
Can
again?
you please
It,
be
it,
quiet?
it's like they're
Exactly.
giving you every
Dude.
sign that this is epic conclusion to iconic movie, not
Exactly.
and that's the thing, is that the original Godfather films were kind of devoid of that. They were kind of made out of struggle and out of a studio not believing that this was going to make money. I mean, more so, they were given more leeways with the second one, and the second one really excelled at them, but it was still really fresh and in that, um, ether of hardship, where this film was trying to live up to the legacy of that. And so there's that layer of this onion being added to this. And Francis Ford Coppola is a different person now. Like, he's trying to live up to his own legacy that he built for himself, and so those elements are part of this. And I think any film that follows up um, films that have that kind of legacy, that's an unenviable task. I can't speak today, but
Mhm.
I think it's really difficult to kind of live up to that and have it live in the same authentic kind of vein without it. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
I think there's a lot going against this film than why it was maybe
Mhm.
difficult,
Yeah,
why it wasn't so well received for
Could
its
have been
time.
it
better.
was only made because the Paramount had such a big flop. I think it was Heaven's Gate or Heaven's End. That was such a huge flop that they needed a guaranteed hit, and everyone involved won money. Like, Robert Duvall straight up refused this movie because the only reason you'd make a sequel this late is, because of money. And unfortunately, that does kind of shine through in a lot of scenes. There's some elements I appreciate, but there's some of it that just feels like a mess. Like it was just cobbled together,
But
not out of
it also
passion.
doesn't feel like it was made out of as a cash grab. Like, I think they were trying to authentically
Parts of it were,
tie
parts
the
of it
loose
weren't.
ends.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, there's parts of it that definitely feel like they're calling back a little too hard, but I do think they are trying to authentically kind of wrap the story and make it come full circle, and I do commend it for
sure.
that, because I do think it does a good job there, like in setting up these parallels. Um, Although it's such a weird time gap that after his daughter is killed, it just cuts to him in the future, and he's an old man in a chair who just kind of keels over. Like, what
And
happened
that's
in
it.
between there?
Yeah,
And that's it. Like, I feel like there's more to the story that we just missed in one crossfade.
yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking. I was like, but we don't know what happened to Andy Garcia. We don't know what happened to, Connie. We don't know what happened to his, ex-wife.
Like, what's
None of
Vincent up
that.
to?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's what I want to
Mm.
see. Like the first two films, like yeah, they kind of ended on a somewhat abrupt note, but it was enough of a satisfying conclusion. We know enough about what happened. Part
It
two
almost
And
wraps up like four plot lines in one ending, and this just feels so anticlimactic in comparison.
it almost seems like they're setting it up for like a Godfather TV series.
Yeah, a little bit. Honestly, it kind of has a TV movie feel at times. Like
Sometimes.
I appreciate the cinematography and the way it's shot and edited together. I thought the sound design was kind of crap in this film. The gun sound
Yeah.
effects are so bad. Like, what
Yeah,
the
there's
fuck
no way
happened?
that
How did they
British
sound
guns
more
sound like
realistic in the
LMGs.
70s?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like GoldenEye sound effects. There's that stock pistol sound effect that I hate.
Yes,
That
there,
kind of
there
does
is
the
there
go
is
pew
like
pew.
stock video game sound effects in there. It's
It's
like
so bad. Like, what happened? Could you not get the same guy? They sounded so realistic in the 70s. This was made in
this is the
1990.
Godfather movie. This seems
Yeah,
like some
mhm.
two-bit like
Well,
random gangster movie.
and it's such a stark contrast to how hard the cinematographer tries to draw the film together, and it sounds like that. It's that
something
that kind of
that's worth
soundscape.
noting, though, is this originally wasn't supposed to be called Godfather Part 3. Francis
Mm.
Ford Coppola originally wanted to call it Death of Michael Corleone, so it was more supposed to be more of an epilogue than kind of a third part of a whole. Like, the first two feel like such tight parts, like two parts of one kind of story, where this feels like it's more removed from that. And it would have been interesting if they kind of did this as almost like a separate trilogy, where Death of Michael Corleone Part 1 and 2 or something, and they maybe fleshed out more of the story there. Like, that was one proposal that never kind of went through, or one idea.
I
But
would have watched that.
And Francis Ford Coppola recently re-edited this film. I watched the original theatrical version, but he recently kind of rearranged some things, and he calls it Part 3 Coda: The Death of Michael Corleone, to try to give it more of that. And is that the version that you watched, Julia?
That was the version that I watched. Yeah,
Are
I didn't
there-
watch the
Okay.
original.
Do you know if there's any major differences between the cuts? Like, from what you can tell.
I can't. Well, I didn't watch the original one. I just watched the director's cut, so I can't compare it to the
Okay.
one that came before it.
One thing that I read that apparently they changed, like, does the coda open up with the clergy and him
Yes.
kind of?
Yeah.
So that was one thing. That's something that in the original cut that doesn't come until like 40 minutes in, and so apparently they put that up the front to try to establish what he's doing now. Where the original film opens up with the party, and
leather.
Mary's character and those happening. So you introduce Mary's and Vincent's character, and that happens within the first like 10 minutes of the film. So
Yeah.
they kind of rearrange things, and they maybe add a couple things. But I think the coda cut is actually shorter than the theatrical one also. So
That's what
it's
I
like
heard.
it's 4 minutes shorter. So it's really a more of a rearrangement of
Yeah.
what's there rather than they unearthed like 40 extra minutes of film. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
And Sophia
Like,
Coppola.
I'm not sure if they added this. I'm not sure if they added this scene in the movie, but there's this one scene where Vincent, during the party at the church, I think it was at the church, he meets with Joey Zaza to kind of like reconcile some stuff, and Vincent bites Joey Zaza's ear.
That's in
Yep.
the original cut.
Yep.
That's an
And he
Okay,
sounds like
okay.
a dog while doing it.
So this is kind of
Yeah.
behind this is kind of besides the sorry, I'm kind of going on a tangent. I just want to say before I
No,
forget.
please do.
Go for it.
So in Cavalleria Rusticana, the opera that Anthony was starring in, there's a scene where the main character, I think his name is Turiru.
Toryu.
Turiru, yes.
Yeah.
I was like, how the hell do I say that name?
It is a very odd pronunciation. It's
I'm
almost
like, what?
Japanese with the tururyu.
I kind of sounds like Tulio, but I'm not gonna
does a
say
little
that.
bit.
Tulio.
But and then he has to fight the other guy who has his girl or something.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they Tulio bites the ear of his opponent, and in Sicilian or old Italian culture, that signifies a fight to the death.
Yes.
And that's essentially what happened between Vincent and Joey.
Okay.
So I'm like,
That's
parallels.
All right. That
Yay.
It's not parallel, but I thought it was like
That's better
so much
knowing that.
keyed in because there was like a
Yeah,
huge
yeah.
close up of when Anthony in the opera bit the ear of the guy. It's like, okay, and then you see the mother at the end. She covers herself with the shawl, and
Yeah.
as Mary's dying, Connie puts the shawl on. It's like, okay,
So on the
again,
nose.
it's like
Yeah.
it's right there.
Like,
you know?
I love the film.
I see
feels
what
like
you're
that.
trying to do.
Double ham
You're
fisted.
trying too hard.
Yeah, it feels Hollywoodized. It feels like
Yeah.
people were mixed on
Yes.
part 2. So let's pull a
Absolutely.
Rise of Skywalker and quote unquote fix what the previous sequel apparently did wrong. Those elements drove me nuts too.
Yeah.
Just the
They
whole
ruined Star Wars.
like, oh, well, killing Fredo
ruined
was
it.
bad, and we need to keep reminding the audience that was bad. And he's not cold anymore. He does have a heart, and they could have done a better job of selling that.
Like I said, they're trying too hard and they missed the mark.
I agree, but it's not the worst sequel we talked about on here. It's not as bad as 2010 or Matrix Revolutions, but it is
No.
just not on level with the first two. Like, we went from savoring a fine wine to chugging Diet Coke. And some people enjoy Diet Coke. Diet Coke's fine at first, but there's just nothing there. It's just
Yeah.
kind of blah.
And it had a weird aftertaste.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of.
It's like that wine.
feel
It's
gross
like
afterwards.
incest.
Yeah.
We
Just-
went
I
from
don't like it.
drinking classic
Don't like it.
Italian vino to Sunnybrook Pinot Noir.
Oh god, don't remind me. 5
It's
out
like
of
a
10.
bad glass of Zinfandel, which is my
Yeah.
least favorite
Oh,
wine.
okay.
I
Or
hate
Franzia.
Zinfandel.
Or Franzia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to tell me about all the good wines sometime. Recommend something.
Yeah, come on down here to Niagara. I'll take you to the old winery I used to work at, and I'll show you.
Hey, Awesome.
I crushed these grapes with my feet.
I was building bricks before
Big
you were
ol'
born.
And this is the barrel cellar where we totally don't come and meet everybody here. No joke. In the winery I used to work at, they had a big concrete cellar and a big table there. It was the longest single pour concrete table in all of North America. But I used to make a joke. Never mind the screaming that's coming from the barrels. That was just one of our ex-employees here. But I kid you not. Like if I could show it. I do have a tab open. Give me
Oh.
30 seconds here. Let me see if I can find it. I've been walking around. I'll have to sit back down on my computer. Sorry, give me a second here.
No worries.
But it quite literally looks like a mafia thing. So.
Like, well, gonna do today.
Don
from this family.
Uh,
All I can think of is, I think it was Family Guy, where it's like, we've got to know the Kellogg's characters here today. We got Rice Krispies and got chocolate. That's all I can think of that scene too. Pop culture ruined the dawn for me, man. I'm sorry. In the meantime, what would you guys rate The Godfather Part 3 out of 10?
I would go with a solid 6.5 out of 10.
That's fair.
They make a good effort to it. I said it once, I'll say it again. They tried too hard and missed the mark. It's just... Yeah.
Well,
Tried so hard.
Got so far. I'm gonna be marginally more generous than Matthew here, and I'm gonna bring it up to a 6.9.
Screw you.
Giggity.
Just yeah, just because.
Because the incest.
Yeah.
Yeah, please no more.
Get it,
incest.
Julia,
This is- this is-
what would you rate out of 10?
I can't think of a more.
No,
Go on.
go ahead.
I couldn't think of a more appropriate rating for it.
I know.
But go on.
I'm gonna give it a solid 6.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a bit more harsh and give it a 5 out of 10. It tried. There were the actors mostly did a pretty good job. There was some great cinematography and editing, but it's just underwhelming, especially.
Oh,
compared
that
to the
is
first two.
100% a
And
mafia
that is
torture
a
table.
mafia
Look at that.
Exactly
torture table.
right. Exactly.
It's
right?
like the
What
scene in
the
Casino
fuck?
where they break the guy's fucking thumbs.
It's totally there. As soon as I would take the people in there, I would say, and here I'm gonna make you an offer that you can't refuse, and everyone would just start dying here. Like I had people
Literally.
coming down. It's like,
Jeez.
is that really wine that's stained on the ground? It wouldn't be wine. I'd say it's like, shh. Ask any questions. You're the one
That's
here.
insane.
Questions that I can't answer here.
Exactly.
Don't
I
ask
can tell
questions you don't
the
want to know the answer
but
to.
then you might
Yeah.
have to disappear.
What's the matter for you?
Exactly. How you doing?
What's the
Nice.
matter for you? Drop the gun, grab the
Go
cannoli. Come on,
Noli.
let's go.
Yeah, come on.
I think
yeah.
it's about time that we
Keep
we
your
wrap
friends
this up
close
here.
and your enemies
Grab
closer.
ourselves a couple gabagools, grab ourselves some nice vino, some cannoli.
Some chamomilla.
Some nice
Go to
Yeah,
sleep.
exactly.
carbonara
Enjoy
pasta.
ourselves.
It's too late for carbonara pasta. That stuff is gonna be in you for like the next 2 days.
Good.
Oh, what you could do with
Maybe
a
I'm
nice
looking for that.
gabagool right about now.
Yeah, I know.
You can have a gabagool at any time of the
All
day.
right.
That's the perfect thing about a gabagool.
Thank you
I
guys.
thought gabagool was a joke.
Yeah, me
That's why I
too.
thought it was a
Gabagool.
sandwich.
Yeah, I thought it was
Gabagool.
too. Denver, gabagool you. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe there's something more legitimate
Ian.
to it. Yes.
It's basically
I'm
funny
sorry.
they're saying
It-
gabacola, which is a
Ian,
deli.
how
So
comfortable
you're just
is
running
that
around
fence you're
saying,
sitting
"Hey,
on?
salami, salami, gabagool."
Yeah, quite
gabagool."
literally on the fence with a 5 out of 10, eh? Yeah,
Yeah,
quite
how
literally.
comfortable is that fence you're sitting on?
I've given a couple movies recently 5 out of 10. I just don't know.
You're
Yeah.
always sitting
Good
on
rating.
that 5-10 fence. It's gonna get wider and wider. It's gonna become a barrier at this point.
Yeah, we'll see
Oh,
how it
boy.
goes. Because next episode, I believe, is the driving episode. We're going to talk about Cars, Lost Highway, and what was the third movie?
I'm
Drive.
Give
Drive.
you a night call to tell you how I. Yeah,
Yeah.
We're doing the most like film bro episode of all time.
Yeah,
And
Cars
you're
is
including cars.
yeah, Cars is my
Cars.
favorite film bro movie.
Family. Cars.
Yeah.
I watched that
Family.
movie so many times when I was sick. Like I can't watch it anymore.
I can't wait to watch it because Steven hates me and wants to see me suffer, so I guess I'll sit through it again.
But hey, at least we're gonna watch Lost Highway. That's some good David
Yes,
Lynch
I'm
right
actually
there.
looking forward to that. I haven't seen it yet. Thank you so much, Julia. You've been great.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun tonight.
You're fantastic, and same
Thank
with
you for
you,
being
Matt.
on.
Thanks for coming back,
We'd
man.
love to have you back if we do another Italian themed episode. If you have any ideas or
Stop racial
suggestions,
profiling, Devin.
feel free. Or just
Wow, okay.
any movies you want to talk about. Just
There
let us
you
know.
go.
And
That's the answer.
yeah, it can be about literally anything. We got our
Just
we got
watch
a
this
request
guy.
form.
This guy is gonna have me like come on the podcast for the next Italian themed episode with a tambourine and a accordion and he.
Castanets.
Mamma mia, pensavo come Gandhi.
Giannaluna
Well, I
I'm
know you
joking.
also did animation, so if you ever want to vent your gripes with the animation industry, you're welcome to do that too.
Well, I haven't actually worked animation.
I mean, we're talking about Cars next week.
I
Oh,
I
sure.
only did animation school for 1 year.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
what do you
but
do now?
it is not my industry. Like I
Gotcha.
like animation, but it's not my job.
No worries.
That's fair.
Yeah. I can talk about it though.
Yeah.
Right on.
Have a great night, everybody. And is
Thank
it
you.
Thursday yet? Yeah. Thank you, guys. Moire!